Chapter 15. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go. Shoa.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Assistant Yen didn't immediately respond to Lieutenant Colonel Lu's greeting. His gaze first swept over Zhang Yingying, pausing for a moment, just in time to meet the latter's gaze. Love goes small. Say Netku. Assistant Yen was in his early 30s and of medium height. He might not even be as tall as Zhang Yingying in high heels, but his posture was strong and his face was quite handsome. It was just that the corners of his lips were habitually pursed, and his expression was cold and solemn. He did not look like someone who was easy to talk to. What left the deepest impression was his eyes. His pupils were slightly dark red, and a similar color seeped out from the edges of his eyes, especially at the corners of his eyes, where the protruding veins and veins near his temples were intertwined. It was a rather uncomfortable feeling. Lieutenant Colonel Lu saw that the two of them were sizing each other up, but he pretended that he didn't know and didn't help to introduce them. Assistant Yen, what can I do for you? According to the command center's suggestion, a batch of detection equipment has been transferred from my company to be used to screen the suspects temporarily detained on the ship. Assistant Yan's face was expressionless as he directly operated his wristband. He indicated to Lieutenant Colonel Lu and quickly passed the authorization verification. Detection equipment? Lieutenant Colonel Lu asked curiously, is the search over? Not yet, but the precision of the equipment is quite high, and the installation and debugging will take some time. Understood, understood. Lieutenant Colonel Lu felt a bit regretful. Since it was equipment acceptance, as a supervisor, he had to be present. That was the end of his friendly interaction with the young female lawyer. He signaled Assistant Yen to wait for a moment and turned to Zhang Yingying with a smile. Miss Zhang, shall we stop here first? It's still early, so I'll arrange a cabin for you to rest first. I'll arrange for someone to send the information to you later. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. Zhang Yingying knew that it was no longer suitable for her to stay in the monitoring center alone, so she took the initiative to shake Lieutenant Colonel Lu's hand and bid her farewell. When she passed by Assistant Yen, Zhang Yingying gave him a friendly smile. She narrowed her eyes and activated the automatic camera function of her contact lenses, saving a photo of the person's face. The corners of Assistant Yan's lips twitched. He didn't know if that was considered a response. His line of sight did not land on Zhang Yingying either. Judging from the angle, he was looking at the surveillance footage in the room. Zhang Yingying glanced back the instant she walked out the door. Lieutenant Colonel Lu could be considered quite cautious. He didn't want to give others a handle. He had long since indicated to his subordinates to switch out Luo Nan's close-up. Luo Nan's figure had already disappeared into a dozen or so similar images on the monitor screen. He couldn't be considered too eye-catching. But Zhang Yingying had a strong feeling the focus of this Assistant Yan's gaze was aimed at Luo Nan, and it had been a long time since he moved. Walking in the corridor inside the warship, Zhang Yingying entered the image she had just taken into the database and confirmed the search criteria. Judging from the uniform, it's Sky Blue Security, a professional security company under Quantum Corporation. They're able to communicate directly with the military, so their position should be high up. And those eyes, a few seconds later, a warning sounded. Information listed as secret. You do not have sufficient authority. Zhang Yingying wasn't particularly surprised. She pursed her lips and switched to another channel. Not long after, he took out a simple personal file. The reason why he said it was simple was that there was still a considerable portion that had been blocked. However, she could already verify a portion of her conjecture from the current information. The electronic photo on top of the file was precisely Assistant Yan's appearance. He was just younger by 7 or 8 years, and he was currently revealing a spirited smile. Yan Yongbua, former lecturer of Acumen College. He left his post of his own accord in 90. His father, former professor of Acumen College, Yan Hong. Okay then. Enemies really do meet on a narrow road. Speaking of which, did he recognize me in the end? Zhang Yingying thought back to the conversation she had with Xie Junping before she boarded the warship. She had no choice but to make an amendment, this giant ship of Quantum Corporation doesn't care about little ants, but the spider and whatnot on it might not. This seemed to be a very troublesome choice. Give it up. Luo Nan's thoughts stirred and the marvelous scene that appeared beneath the tip of his pen flowed within his mind. It's really cool. Luo Nan, who was very cool, was still drawing with his pen. Even though he had already entered the fixed space, locked onto the source of interference, and confirmed the true identity of the specter, he didn't have any intentions of stopping. The feeling of the pen and mind merging into one was truly very marvelous. The burning wraith was an inconceivable existence. Luo Nan didn't know how to categorize it and determine its nature. Even though he had entered the fixed space, he didn't have too many clues as to how to deal with it. But when he held the luster pen in his hand and allowed the lines to flow from the tip of the pen, all the problems were no longer problems. The material and the mental, the real and the illusory, the present and the future. Multiple dimensions interweaved together to depict the same goal from multiple angles. His inspiration would never dry up no matter what. The distorted sketch of the prison building that was filled with symbolism revealed more and more clear conceptual clues. Luo Nan's lips unconsciously opened and closed slightly. He silently recited the mnemonic chant that he had long since become familiar with. He only chose the first 4 words, "My heart's a prison." He silently recited it without a sound, but the intent that carried through it had never been as condensed as it was now. It broke through the boundary between the real and the illusory to attack the plane of the visualization. It was as if it had transformed into an iron hammer that smashed heavily onto the visualization diagram. It was like the ringing of a bell. It was like the striking of a chime. Countless silver threads were extracted from the diagram amidst the fine vibrations. They split apart to randomly construct countless flickering structures. And they clearly had a close relationship with the prison building in the notebook. Some were clear and proper. Some were distorted and blurry. There was also an enormous difference in their images. There were tightly woven fences inside. There was a sealed iron cage. There were leaping arcs of electricity. There was a malevolent beam gun. In short, each and every one of them was a symbol of violence and coercion. They were the embodiment of the details of the prison drawing. Due to the leaping of consciousness and the haphazard brushwork, the majority of the structures were only superficial. They didn't conform to the principles of construction at all. The time that they existed was extremely short. But every time the intertwining and shattering structure of silver threads swept past, the burning wraith that had already penetrated into the inner layer of the visualization diagram acted as if it was facing a great enemy. It moved endlessly in defense, cutting quite a sorry figure. The burning wraith also wanted to carry out interference and destruction. But the problem was that the process that unfolded in multiple dimensions at the same time had already completely exceeded the scope of its control. Luo Nan didn't understand why the burning wraith that was over 100 meters tall had gone wrong when it howled at the sky. It was actually so unbearable. But he wouldn't stop. The chanting never stopped. The visualization never stopped. The tip of the brush never stopped. Gradually, Luo Nan gave up on injecting the inspiration of the details into the sketch. Instead, he began to do subtraction. He revolved around the increasingly clear conceptual clues and strengthened them. Within the visualization diagram, those leaping and combining silver threads seemed to respond to the intense and pure intent of his mind. Hundreds and thousands of flashy but impractical constructions collapsed with a rumble, revealing the simple and pure composition of the tetrahedron once again. At the center of the diagram, at the center of the inscribed sphere, there was a crashing sound coming from the center of the sphere. It was as if the heart was trembling. The burning wraith actually lost the courage to linger any longer when faced with this change. Within the darkness, the light of the flames curled up and separated from the visualization diagram. It transformed into a streak of red light that pierced through the sky and left. This was the visualization plane. Where could it go? Before this thought could finish, the world of nothingness shook once more. The red light seemed to penetrate through an incorporeal membrane. After a slight pause, it increased its speed and pierced through the sky. Luo Nan's consciousness suddenly went into a daze the instant that the membrane was penetrated. An ice-cold metal wall appeared in his field of vision. A notebook was placed on his lap, and he was drawing with his pen. Chapter 16. Genius in 1 second. Remember Love Go. TalkNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Out-of-body state. Right now Luo Nan was like watching a supernatural movie. But before he had the time to experience the pros and cons, the burning wraith's red glow had already penetrated through the wall in the blink of an eye, disappearing without a trace. Oh, saying disappearing wasn't accurate. This was because there was still an indescribable, yet clearly distinguishable sensation that marked the burning wraith's position in the bottom of his heart. Luo Nan knew the reason. This was because the drawing under his pen was a self-portrait in name. In reality, it depicted a considerable range of mental and physical states. Naturally, this included the burning wraith. Oh, the unnatural distortion on the sketch of the prison building was it. Right now Luo Nan's visualization and drawing had already merged into one. It was difficult for each other. Since he had left an imprint on the sketch, how was it possible for him to not leave a trace in his mind? No matter where the burning wraith fled to, it still appeared clearly on Luo Nan's drawing and within his mind at this moment. And because of the burning wraith's abrupt escape, the dynamic change of the interference power stimulated Luo Nan's inspiration once again. His main body actually hadn't stopped writing under this inexplicable out-of-body state. Even though the sketch in his notebook couldn't contain any more details, his inspiration had already gushed out. It was unstoppable. The tip of his pen was practically piercing through the paper. It drew intertwined lines on the only empty space on the outside of the sketch. The constantly strengthening conceptual clues finally buzzed into shape under the casting of inspiration. It was just like, crash. On the visualization plane, a thick, heavy crow chain appeared like a predatory python amidst the trembling sound. It appeared from the center of the visualization diagram, exploding out with its long body. The incorporeal membrane that had just been pierced was torn apart once more. The crow chain then broke through the void and entered reality. It followed the direction the burning wraith fled in, breaking through the air. Luo Nan didn't know how long the chain was. The front half had already entered the void, but the center of the sphere still hadn't been pulled to its limit. Perhaps length had no meaning on this plane. In a split second, Luo Nan heard a sharp hiss. The crow chain, including his mind, made contact with the scorching hot and irritable burning wraith in this instant. The chains trembled and moved even faster, actually forcefully piercing through the other party. Immediately after, countless silver threads burst forth, shuttling back and forth, interlocking with each other, firmly locking the burning wraith in place. Caught it. But Luo Nan was only delayed by 1,000th of a second. Before he could taste the taste of victory, an enormous pulling force passed through the long chain and fiercely acted upon his body. The burning wraith also didn't know where it got its strength from, but it was like a wild boar that had gone berserk. Disregarding everything, it carried the chains and madly leapt forward. Luo Nan was unable to control the explosive charge of the specter. Even his body was affected by some sort of strange and mysterious power. He just felt his entire body lighten, and the intersecting images of reality and visualization rapidly changed. The environment of the confinement room was replaced by the various cabins, corridors, and mechanical structures of the ship. This time, it really was an out-of-body experience. Moreover, it was forcibly dragged out of his body by the berserk burning wraith, through the wall. What was this? The physical laws of the soul. At first, Luo Nan was still thinking whether or not there were people who could see this unscientific scene. But soon he was certain that the soldiers, officers, and AI machines that came and went on the warship were completely unaware of the chase that was happening above their heads. The tightly guarded transport ship had been completely transformed into an undefended racecourse. At least it was like this for now. It must be said that this was quite a novel experience. Luo Nan also tried to observe his current state of existence. He worked hard for a long time before coming to a preliminary conclusion. In his soul state, his form was very close to that of the burning wraith. It was just that he didn't have that oppressive dark red fiery glow. He was more like a shadow of nothingness. Luo Nan still wanted to carefully experience it for a bit. But after a short period of muddle-headedness, he sensed a chill that rapidly increased in intensity. It was simply like he was raging through a world of ice and snow with his naked body. The cruel cold wind sliced at his body like blades. The incorporeal cold wind was simply unavoidable. The incorporeal soul didn't have the effect of splattering blood in all directions, but the intense feeling of pain was real and real. It was very clear that the situation was tilting in a dangerous direction. And it was clearly closely related to the hasty and passive out-of-body experience. Luo Nan's first thought was to hurry and return to his main body. But right now, his mind and the chains coexisted. They were all bound to the burning wraith. He was completely muddle-headed as to how to unbind and how to break free. The more muddle-headed he was, the more he needed to do something. Luo Nan did 3 things in this life-threatening moment. First, he made a comparison, which was more painful, the cold wind cutting the soul or the psychotropic drug composition cutting the nerves. Conclusion, there seemed to be no difference. Second, he made a confirmation. In the end, was there still a connection between the soul and the main body? Conclusion, the main body was in quite a bit of pain over there. Third, he raised a question. Since there was a connection between the soul and the main body, where was the connection? Conclusion, I don't know anything else, but it certainly existed on the visualization plane and the draft drawing. Even though it was a bit abstract. The first conclusion strengthened his conviction. The second structure gave him a clear direction. The third conclusion gave him a method. At this very moment, his firm conviction transformed into another wave of chanting sounds. The first 4 words rumbled within the visualization plane and within the soul, my heart's a prison. The visualization plane still blended together with the draft drawing. Between reality and illusion, the messy yet distinct layers of the prison building seemed to be truly constructed. It was piled up layer by layer, covering the limits of Luo Nan's range of perception like a dark cloud. The out-of-body soul appeared to be far away from the main body, but it was actually still within the range of the prison building. The burning wraith was the same. The heavily chained crow shuttled back and forth within this seemingly illusory building, transforming into beams, pillars, thick walls, prisons, torture tools, and it was also at this moment that Luo Nan truly understood the essence of the heavily chained crow. No matter what kind of prison it was the embodiment of coercive rules. Coercive power was certainly the #1 priority. There must be the power of punishment when facing a disobedient prisoner. The burning wraith appeared to be fleeing far away, but as long as it didn't truly throw off the shackles of the chains, it would inevitably suffer a merciless suppression. The heavily chained crow hummed in an instant, carrying out Luo Nan's will. The power stored deep within it was finally displayed. As the result of the accumulation of ideas and inspiration, every strand of the heavily chained crow divided into silver strands. Every chain constructed was linked to Luo Nan's mind. This movement was tantamount to piercing the bound burning wraith from the inside to the outside. It was wrapped and twisted. It was so much so that it was directly sliced and analyzed. A large amount of information was fed back. It was too late to sort through in a short time. The burning wraith hissed in pain. There were no sound waves, but there were seemingly substantial psychic waves that spread to the surroundings. It seemed that this painful emotion was far too intense. The wall lights in the long corridor of the warship suddenly dimmed. In the next moment, the entire row of red warning lights lit up. A tangible and intangible warning sound penetrated through the entire space of the warship. Warning. Warning. Invasion of mutants. I repeat. Invasion of mutants. Level 3 mutant state. Darksider life form has appeared. All conventional armed personnel enter combat positions. Prepare tranquilizers. Enter standby state of AI. Activating the deep blue platform. The burners have entered a state of emergency. Chapter 17. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. The web provides you with wonderful novels to read. In a short few seconds, a dark red alarm light spread a tense and serious atmosphere to every corner of the transport ship. Although this sort of situation was rare for the military, there were always rules to follow. It was enough as long as the various departments and systems obeyed orders. But the problem was that there weren't only soldiers on the transport ship. The moment the alarm rang out, the engineers of Quantum Corporation in Area C who were setting up the site and debugging the equipment were all dumbfounded. They stopped what they were doing and looked at each other, not knowing what to do. The supervisor present, Lieutenant Colonel Liu, had the highest military rank and was also quite experienced. He immediately said, "All non-combat personnel cease work and await further instructions." Lieutenant Colonel Liu was also busy contacting his superiors to confirm the situation. It wasn't easy to get clear instructions. He raised his head to look for the person in charge of Quantum Corporation, but the corner of his eye twitched. As the head of security, Liang Yongbo was sitting at the edge of the construction site. He didn't even raise his head as he fiddled with his wristband, ignoring the changes in the outside world. "They're bragging about how calm you are." Lieutenant Colonel Liu had always disliked this sort of arrogant and conceited fellow. He immediately straightened his face and walked over with large strides. Just as he was about to speak, a swift and fierce man wearing a sky-blue security uniform rushed in front of him and asked Yan Yongbo for instructions. "Captain, we've entered a state of emergency. Do you want to warm it up?" "Warm it up? Old Black." Liang Yongbo still didn't raise his head as he calmly said, "You're wearing an exoskeleton armor and leaping around the warship. Have you ever thought about the feelings of the military? You haven't, right? If you haven't, then ask Lieutenant Colonel Liu." Lieutenant Colonel Liu had just walked over when he was stopped by these words. His imposing manner weakened. It was at this moment that Liang Yongbo raised his head to look at him. "Lieutenant Colonel Liu, what do you think?" The corner of Lieutenant Colonel Liu's eye twitched twice. In the end, he still forcefully held back his anger and forced himself to speak. "Command, the invasion of the Darksider life forms has a high probability of being related to the incident at the Research and Development District. Quantum Corporation's burners will participate in the pursuit and will temporarily be assigned to the Special Forces Squad 7. This is the Communications Identification Code." Liang Yongbo received the relevant data and nodded. "Very well then, I accept the order. But Lieutenant Colonel Liu, I suspect this accident has something to do with the people detained on the warship. I hope the military can increase their surveillance efforts to avoid any unexpected situations. F***ck your grandpa." Lieutenant Colonel Liu finally flew into a rage when a problem was pointed out in the matter he was in charge of. He couldn't be bothered to say anything more, so he turned around and left with a dark expression. Liang Yongbo didn't say much. He stood up and led Blackie in another direction. On the way, he sent a set of data to Blackie. "If that idiot wants to come, he'll need some time to vent his anger. There won't be any changes to the defense. Wait for an opportunity to move to Area A2. Make a big move. If you meet this person, create some accidents." The data was projected on Blackie's retina, showing the handsome and quiet face of a young man. "Love goes small say Netco." Old Black was expressionless. He only nodded slightly, engraving that young face deep in his heart. The alarms and warning lights did not stop. Under the flickering dark red light, the prison building, that was built between reality and illusion, began to collapse after a brief moment of glory. Soon, it turned into ruins and returned to nothingness. After all, Luo Nan hadn't truly constructed a reasonable structure yet. There were many overly casual, future conceptions involved within. Being able to temporarily appear for a period of time was already a pretty decent confirmation. Of course, the most important thing was that the burning wraith was already completely unable to stir up a storm. Walala! Walala! The heavily chained crow continued to retreat. No matter how much the burning wraith struggled, the chains that bound its body continued to dissect, slice, and analyze. The layers of the binding force gradually pointed towards the core essence. A layer of faint bloody light could be seen clearly flowing on the dark base of the chains. The bloody light changed against the flow, drawing back a marvelous heat. It flowed without end. This was the energy that came from the burning wraith. The accumulation of information analysis began to display its effect. A portion of the burning wraith's energy circulation mechanism was cracked. The chains drew back in time, giving Luo Nan support while weakening the burning wraith's strength. Such an outcome was truly timely for Luo Nan, who had left his body in a hurry. The energy poured into Luo Nan's soul. It was like a mouthful of hot soup in a state of extreme hunger. It was like a thick layer of clothing wrapped around one's body in the middle of winter. The results were immediate. The cold wind blades were immediately blocked outside. Within the space of 2 to 3 breaths, even Luo Nan's main body had the corresponding feedback. The state of hunger that was nearing its limit was somewhat alleviated. The situation was always like this. The burning wraith that had lost a large amount of blood had already turned from a wild boar that ran around randomly into a sled dog that wasn't very obedient. Then, it irreversibly transformed into a dead dog. Luo Nan saw the dead dog a few seconds later. The burning wraith was indeed well behaved. It floated in the air sickly. There weren't too many changes to its outer appearance. Even if there were changes, it wouldn't be seen. Only the outer layer of flames had clearly dimmed quite a bit. But there was something very eye-catching. Behind this toy, let's just call it behind for the time being. It dragged a very long tail. The heavily chained crow continued to control, slice, and analyze the burning wraith without end. And it seemed that this would continue for a very long period of time. Even though Luo Nan was in his soul state, he still let out a long breath out of habit. He had finally resolved this inexplicable trouble. He could finally put his energy back on the plane of reality. Luo Nan naturally paid attention to the alarm that resonated throughout the entire ship. Let's not talk about anything else. The terrible negative term, mutant, was already enough to explain a lot of things. But what was a Darksider life form? Luo Nan searched his memories, but there were no results. A clear change had already occurred in the surrounding situation at this time. There wasn't a shadow of a single person within the long internal corridor. But long and narrow cracks had opened up on the walls and floor of the corridor at an unknown time. Pale white smoke could be seen emitting from the cracks, quickly pervading the entire corridor. At the end of the corridor, the muffled sound of footsteps could be heard. 3 majestic exoskeleton armors formed a battle formation. They advanced forward step by step within the misty smoke. Aside from the smoke, the corridor was completely empty. There wasn't a single thing to hide in. The people on the other side looked as if they were facing a great enemy. It was as if there was an incorporeal monster that could hunt and kill at any time. Luo Nan suddenly had a very marvelous feeling when he witnessed this scene, incorporeal. Incorporeal. Why does it seem like this group of people have come to deal with me? The smoke within the corridor grew thicker and thicker. Luo Nan's mind stirred slightly. He didn't engage in the galloping horse style of charging forward like a violent hurricane. Instead, he pulled the half-dead burning wraith and circled around the corridor. He was like a true specter as he passed through the metal wall and entered the adjacent cabin. Then he charged forward all the way towards the direction of the main body. Chapter 18. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shoa.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. After Luo Nan flew past a few cabins, he discovered, actually, the situation here was quite similar to the situation in the corridor. Several transmission ports were opened within the cabins. Faint white smoke flowed out in an unending stream, and the concentration was even higher due to the cramped space. Many of the soldiers were fully armed and standing in the smoke. Their expressions did not change. It was obvious that they were very familiar with this situation. Of course, the smoke was definitely not poisonous. Luo Nan had paid special attention to the effect the smoke had on the soul body due to his previous sense of danger. But judging from the current situation, there was nothing unusual. He suppressed his doubts at the bottom of his heart and focused more on experiencing the feeling of passing through walls. Is this what an out-of-body experience looks like? Luo Nan used various methods to penetrate through 7 to 8 metal walls in a row before confirming his own state once more. His grandfather's formatting theory was a field of metaphysical knowledge to a large degree. Luo Nan would read a few books on philosophy, metaphysics, and mystic arts in addition to his usual research. It was not a difficult task for him to accept his current state. However, Luo Nan also sensed that this ability of his was far from reaching the level of perfection when compared to the ancient records and the knowledge of the mystic arts. When he'd just left his body, he'd almost been dismembered by the cold air of the outside world. Thinking about it now, he still had lingering fears. He had to rely on the burning wraith, this external fuel tank, to ensure that he could cruise for a long time. But no matter what, the feeling of dog sled and riding the clouds was completely different. There was a huge difference between passive and active states. This was the first time Luo Nan had relied purely on his own will to move after his out-of-body experience. Of course, he wasn't used to all sorts of things. Love go small say netka most of the time, there will be some redundant actions and thoughts. More importantly, he had not truly adapted to observing the world in the form of a soul. Luo Nan had a deep understanding of the nervous system. He quickly discovered that on the soul plane, the traditional 5 senses of sight, hearing, nose, tongue, body, and mind, had undergone a large-scale transformation in their operating mechanisms. The visual and auditory processes on this plane were actually an inefficient process. Luo Nan was like a radar in his soul state. He was constantly receiving all sorts of wavelengths from the outside world. The source was so rich that it far exceeded the types of signals that the human nervous system could receive and process. If he stuck to his habit, most of these signals would naturally be lost. Only some of the signals that the nervous system normally processed would be channeled in and transferred to the body for processing before the results were presented in the form of the 5 senses. Not to mention the problem of losing a large amount of waveband signals, even the processed signals would be distorted to a large extent due to the lack of real stimulation to the nervous system. At the very least, he had almost lost his sense of touch. Seems like it's better to deal with it directly. But in this case, how to compile it became a big problem. Luo Nan deliberately went to sense and gather information. He immediately tumbled a few times due to the chaotic and complex amount of information in his surroundings. It seemed that it would be a long process for him to adapt to life on the soul plane. That is to say, with the change of thought, the level and range of the soul sense would be partially expanded. It was like a classical radio, in which one could occasionally hear something interesting amidst the clattering noise. This was an extremely novel experience. Luo Nan didn't mind spending a bit of energy to mull over it. At this moment, a few intermittent keywords caught his attention. Luo Nan's mind stirred slightly, and a small deviation occurred in the direction he was heading. While he was releasing his senses, he was still separated by several layers of metal walls, yet clamorous noises assaulted his face. Luo Nan actually felt a strange sense of intimacy as he entered. This was because this was the place where Lianyu, Li Xuecheng, and the other rich kids were imprisoned. Luo Nan never thought that he would be able to enter and observe the environment he once stayed in such a marvelous way. He clearly existed, yet the others were completely unaware of it. It gave off a marvelous feeling of unreality. Lianyu and the other rich kids were completely unaware that a specter had appeared beside them. They were having a great time arguing. Facts proved that one had to first find the cause of everything within oneself. The atmosphere between the group of rich kids wasn't any better after a certain pervert was imprisoned by himself. Because of the series of events involving the banned drugs, the imprisonment, and Li Xuecheng, the group of people went from lamenting to complaining to arguing and clamoring. The atmosphere unwittingly became tense again. The alarm of the mutant and the strange situation of smoke pervading the air caused them to quiet down for a while. But it was unknown who took the lead and arguments appeared once more. But this time, the content of the argument had a bit of meaning. The focal point of their argument was the mutant species. The evidence for the mutant species spreading through the ocean is conclusive. You don't need to talk nonsense, okay? Are your ears stuffed with shit? Why would I deny the spreading through the ocean? I'm just saying that there's a lot of evidence pointing to the appearance of a new source of infection. The source of infection came from your mouth, right? F***ck, the so-called mutant species referred to the large-scale, highly contagious, mutated phenomena that began to appear in the later stages of World War III. It was simply the most destructive and terrifying example of the world's biology. The most popular explanation for its origin was this: in the depths of some oceanic trench in the Pacific Ocean, a door leading to the depths of the Earth's crust had been opened. Or perhaps it was an even more inconceivable place. Therefore, the fatal pollution came from the ocean. It passed through the marine biosphere to invade the freshwater system and the continent's ecosphere. In the short span of a few years, all sorts of plants, fungi, insects, animals, and even a small portion of humans received varying degrees of pollution. Under the catalysis of genetic mutation, they developed into all sorts of vicious and cruel monstrous life forms. For a time, they were at the very top of the food chain even now. Before the appearance of Quantum Corporation's Deep Blue platform, humanity was in dire straits when faced with such a terrifying species. They could only rely on large metropolitan areas to carry out their defenses. It was truly unbearable to recall. Because it was a matter of life and death, the mutant species was undoubtedly the hottest topic after World War III. Then you explain. What is a Darksider life form? The Mutant Species Encyclopedia was published in the year 2091. I have the complete set. There are 17 major species and over 2,000 types of mutations. Which eye of yours saw a Darksider life form? Sure, if you think your encyclopedia is a holy scripture, then I'm convinced. You're so stupid that I'm convinced. Wait. Finally, someone came out to stop the quarrel. There's no need to be angry about this matter. A new species of mutant can jump out at any time. We're all amateurs. It's impossible for us to figure it out. Hey, Towsy, your old man is a big financial backer of the field laboratory. Have you ever heard of this thing before? Lu Tao, who wore vintage gold-rimmed glasses, looked refined and refined. He could be considered a small anomaly in the crowd. He normally didn't speak much, but he had a certain shocking flavor. He had been holding back his big move as soon as he heard about the Darksider life form. Now that he finally had the opportunity, he chuckled, Darksider life form. Treat it like a specter. It's a pretty good angle to cut into. Chapter 19. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go, we provide you with wonderful novels to read. The cabin was quiet for a moment. Then someone laughed. Spectre. Are you talking about ghosts? You can interpret it however you want. In any case, from what I can see, a so-called Darksider life form is a kind of thing that you can't see or touch. It's something that floats around you. Spectre is a more suitable description. Towsy, you're so disgusting. You're so creepy. A pretty vase seized the opportunity to act spoiled. Actually, when Lu Tao mentioned it, the group of people didn't think much of it. But after being tainted by the coquettish voice of the pretty vase, quite a few people had goosebumps. Some people turned their heads to look at the billowing smoke all around them. They really did feel a bit creeped out in their hearts. Lu Tao actually loved this kind of tone the most. He adjusted his glasses and pretended to be calm. That's the truth. Regarding the Darksider life form, it's only been 1 or 2 years since the industry put forth a related concept. Only a few papers have been published. Apart from the various high-end laboratories, the only ones who are more familiar with it are the military. Looking at the response of the warship, it can be seen that they've had many dealings with the Darksider life form. This is a good thing. The group of scoundrels really detested Lu Tao's habit of keeping them in suspense. Some people were already impatient, we can't see or touch them. What the hell is there to research? Don't tell me you're thinking that people are stupid and have too much money to swindle funds. Get lost. Lu Tao laughed and scolded. He finally cut to the chase. Why did I mention the military? It's because the military lists the Darksider life form as a special type of mutant. However, the vast majority of research institutes hold different opinions. They believe that the two are not the same thing. The closest way of saying it is to guess that this thing might be the primal virus that causes the mutation. Ah! It was still the pretty vase from before. But this time she was truly frightened. She wasn't the only one. Everyone's expressions weren't too good. The shadow of the mutant species was always hanging over everyone's head. Even the rich second generation was no exception. The mutant species that had already taken form could still arouse their interest in research and discussion. But if it was the mutant itself that made people wish they were dead, and it was a monster that everyone avoided like the plague. Lu Tao spread his hands. Can you guys not scare yourselves? What I said was just one of the most ridiculous guesses. This thing has almost no resemblance to a virus. In comparison, even the so-called dark matter life form is more reliable than it. The beautiful vase slapped him coquettishly and automatically entered the flirting mode. Everyone around them was cursing. Lu Tao felt that he had been wronged. He simply didn't try to be mysterious and directly gave a simple introduction. In short, these Darksider life forms are like specters. They truly exist, but they can't be seen or touched. According to the nature determined in the laboratory, it can be determined that it almost never comes into contact with common particles, does not react with electromagnetic waves, and does not actively emit radiation. This also meant that in most natural environments, it was impossible to directly observe them using any conventional means. Well, under normal circumstances, they won't interact with anything in this world. Someone laughed. If it doesn't work, what's the threat? The people on the ship are all nervous. Are they trying to scare us? I mean, under normal circumstances. Have you ever thought about why these things are called living things? This is because under certain circumstances, these things have the ability to interfere with the material plane. Moreover, they have a certain purpose. What purpose? There are thousands and thousands of variations. But according to statistics, nearly 40% of the cases where interference occurs are interference. Stimulation of the creature's emotions, causing people to lose concentration, be irritated, easily angered, sensitive, and so on. Luo Nan, who was listening to the side, was finally stirred. He sized up the burning wraith once more. This fellow was still in a dead dog state right now, but everything that had happened before had perfectly verified Lu Tao's description. The Darksider life form is extremely dangerous. Remember, the parts that we can't observe are meaningless to us because they don't interact with us at all. But as long as we are able to discover them, they are certainly threatening. This is because they are attempting to influence and disturb our plane. How do they disturb? It's very simple. There's an old saying, know thyself and know thy enemy. Under normal circumstances, the Darksider life form doesn't interact with us. But once they have an intention, they must first understand us, make contact with us, and collect our information. This is like an active radar. Normally, if the radar isn't turned on, no one would be able to discover its existence. But if they search with a certain purpose, they will certainly emit a beam and expose their position. Luo Nan, who was observing the burning wraith, was suddenly startled. His attention became unprecedentedly focused. Of course. The Darksider life form is 10,000 times more hidden than a radar. They don't even need to emit a detection beam or anything. They just need to absorb the various wave bands in the air. Then they can analyze and process them in a way that we are unable to understand. And this is also the only opportunity we have to detect them. Lu Tao was high from talking. His arm pointed at the surrounding mist. Do you see this shadow mist? This mist releases a type of special particle. They are extremely sensitive to the various wave bands in the air. Once they discover which direction has a relatively concentrated nature change in the wave band, they can transmit the relevant data to the central AI through various sensors. They can conduct analysis and determine the probability of the Darksider life form appearing. Lian Yu, who hadn't spoken all this time, also became interested. Her specialty just so happened to be communications. Tauster, you know quite a bit about this. Lu Tao was waiting for these words. He immediately pretended to be calm. This sort of shadow mist combat technique was developed by a laboratory in the wilderness that my family funded. At this time, there was naturally no lack of people supporting him. F***ck Tauster, you've hidden yourself quite deeply. You guys have earned quite a bit from this technology. Not bad. Not bad. Lu Tao was beaming with laughter. He felt extremely refreshed in his heart. But Luo Nan, who was floating beside him, had a different kind of mood at this time. He looked at the surrounding mist and was actually a bit stupefied for a time. Lian Yu, who hadn't spoken much, asked at this time, "It's so hard to even discover the Darksider life form. How do we deal with it?" Right now, there's only the burner. In fact, the discovery of the Darksider life form happened after Quantum Corporation introduced the burner and the Deep Blue platform. It can be seen from actual combat that the burner has a relatively high sensitivity towards the Darksider life form. Only the burner can control the Deep Blue walkers. Only by establishing the archetype format and igniting the format of fire can they cause direct damage to the Darksider life form. Then, Lian Yu still wanted to ask, but she didn't expect a long beep to open the cabin's outer door. The sliding metal door was still moving when a strong and vigorous figure leaped in from the mist. A thick firearm was set up and tiny red dots of light danced chaotically throughout the room. They streaked across the faces of the rich kids who were at a loss as to what to do. Get down. All of you get down. A fierce and unyielding voice penetrated into their eardrums through the amplification of the loudspeaker. Everyone, crawl forward in order. Immediately go outside. There will be people outside to receive you. The person who had thrown himself into the room was certainly a rather brave and capable character. But after staying in the army for a long time, it was inevitable that he would overlook the fact that this group of rich kids before his eyes really weren't battle-hardened warriors. They were already completely scared silly when faced with this sudden situation. It was unknown who it was that cleared his throat after a mere half a second, but a sharp cry filled the entire cabin. Being spurred on by the cry, the restlessness of fear engulfed the hearts of everyone like a storm. Chapter 20. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go. Shuanet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan had to say that he was grateful to this fierce warrior who charged in first. Love goes small. Say Netku. His opponent's misjudgment gave him a chance to react. Luo Nan made a decision the instant the shriek rang out. His telepathic thoughts pierced through the heavily chained crow to stimulate the burning wraith. He forcefully pierced the burning wraith awake from its dead dog state and left it in place. The main body of his soul followed the same path he came from and rolled back. Luo Nan's judgment was based on the worst possible situation. He didn't hold any hope of getting lucky. As it turned out, it couldn't have been more timely. The military's reaction was lightning fast. Once they discovered the true nature of the screaming second-generation rich kids, they didn't expect to cooperate at all and immediately took action. Inside the room, the fierce warrior, who was the first to rush in, raised the thick gun in his hand. Amidst the roar, a dazzling electric light shot out. This was more effective than any order. Although the screams were even more ear-piercing, the group of second-generation rich kids immediately prostrated themselves on the ground. Other than the fierce warrior, no one else was left standing in the room. Everyone scrambled to the gate that had just been opened, rolling and crawling over. The fierce warrior finally took control of the situation. He raised his head, which was wearing a fully enclosed helmet, and aimed the translucent panel at the empty upper part of the cabin. In a normal person's field of vision, there was nothing but churning smoke and smoke. However, Fierce Warrior obviously didn't think so. His right hand swiped over the switch button of the gun and changed the empty bullet mode to single-shot mode. The muzzle made a muffled sound. In the next moment, a large cloud of fire rose in the half-closed cabin, almost covering the entire upper half of the cabin, like a violent and reckless miniature flame bomb. Right now, Luo Nan was already 2 cabins away. The straight-line distance was over a dozen meters. But since the chains were still fused with the burning wraith, it was very hard to pull them away. The information from the other side was unavoidably transmitted back. Luo Nan's mind trembled the instant the fiery cloud soared. A substantial impact traveled along the chains. Even though Zhang Xian was just an ethereal soul, it felt as though he had been punched in the chest, leaving him in a terrible state. Luo Nan was certain that the true destructive power of this shot was absolutely not the seemingly violent flames. This was because Luo Nan did not feel the transmission of heat at this moment. Instead, it was an attack power that directly reached the soul plane. If he was already like this, then there was no need to mention the burning wraith that was still staying in the cabin. It had just woken up from the dead dog state, and was still somewhat muddle-headed. The red cloud exploded overhead, crossing the boundary between reality and illusion, and acting on its body. In an instant, the burning wraith's body unexpectedly shrunk by a circle from the explosion. It clearly suffered damage. This sort of flame bullet-like ammunition was clearly made to deal with the Darksider life form. Its effects were immediate. However, it wasn't easy to reload the ammunition. After one shot, the fierce warrior retreated and reloaded at the same time. He couldn't complete it in a short time. However, it would be too naive to think that there was a chance just because of that. One person's skills were limited, but he couldn't fight against the other side's numbers. After the first flame bullet was fired, there was a succession of bullet trajectories that cut in from outside the cabin. At least 5 of the same type of ammunition shot into the cabin and exploded. For a time, the cloud of fire churned and the temperature of the entire cabin rose by at least 20 degrees. The soaring temperature looked frightening, but it was actually meaningless. It proved that the destructive power of the ammunition had shifted beyond the conventional plane. The burning wraith that remained in the cabin had the most right to speak. Not only did this wave of flame bullets have a direct attack on the soul plane, it even had a viscous ability. The burning wraith also attempted to flee when it suffered the attack. But it was as if a bucket of glue had been poured into the surrounding void, making it difficult for the burning wraith to move. Perhaps it was some sort of incorporeal and powerful magnetic field. Luo Nan continued to ponder as he retreated. Right now he could see that the military had clearly formed a set of effective methods to deal with the Darksider life form. If he had stayed behind just now, it was truly unknown what would have happened to him. Luo Nan's route of retreat and method had been carefully considered. From Lu Tao's introduction, he roughly understood that the Shadow Mist's capture of the Darksider life form wasn't really a matter of seeing it. Rather, it was a method of calculation that had a problem with probability. In other words, it was very likely that the military didn't know the true form, quantity, and relationship between the Darksider life form. Luo Nan pushed out the burning wraith that he had just obtained without the slightest hesitation. With the burning wraith attracting firepower, he could be considered safe up until now at least. But at this moment, the burning wraith that was bound within the cabin had finally aroused its vicious nature after it had suffered a series of attacks. The wraith's body, which was already riddled with holes, suddenly shrunk. Its originally incorporeal shadow body became a bit more solid. There was even an instant where the outline of a body became even clearer. The heavily chained crow that was still locked together with the burning wraith transmitted concrete information. But Luo Nan wasn't able to discern what it was for a time. He just felt that it was some sort of vicious beast. This incorporeal vicious beast faced the sky and roared in the next moment. Psychic waves that were nearly tangible filled the cabin in an instant. They penetrated through the metal walls and rapidly spread. From the moment the gunshot rang out, the burning cloud of fire above their heads simply scared the rich kids to the point of pissing their pants. They all screamed for help right now. Some people didn't even have the strength to crawl cleanly. Luckily, the soldiers outside the door saw through their nature and changed tactics. They promptly extended their hands and dragged them out. But the burning wraith's roar arrived at this time. Actually, no one heard the sound. But under the sweeping psychic waves, an irrepressible fear of death erupted in everyone's hearts. At least 3 people pissed their pants in this instant. There were even some who directly fainted. But on another level, through the chains and through the burning wraith, Luo Nan saw that this group of rich kids had already collapsed in the face of fear. Between their mouths and noses, between the pores of their bodies, a very strange thing began to ooze out. Countless dark red specks of light floated up. They were like specks of dust floating under the sunlight. But the dim glimmer clearly contained a marvelous energy. It was like a strange spore, and its source was the dozen or so shivering rich second-generation heirs inside and outside the cabin. Practically everyone's body sprayed out these dark red spores, interweaving with each other. As a whole, they formed a thin glowing mist that covered the entire cabin. The density of the glowing mist rose far too quickly. There were large amounts of spores exchanging in and out of their bodies at every moment. The density was so great that it simply burned with a layer of gloomy flames. Finally, the density of the glowing mist reached a certain limit. It spontaneously bubbled up and submerged the burning wraith within. Only a vague outline of its outline could be seen. At first glance, it looked like Luo Nan had sketched the wraith in the beginning. It was just that it was much more concise. There were many places that had already broken away from the structure of a picture. It had become extremely abstract. As a whole, it was just like an enlarged strange symbol. The burning wraith locked onto its target the instant the symbol appeared. The fierce soldier, who had always been at the very front, had a sturdy body wrapped in exoskeleton armor. It was as if it had been struck by lightning. Then it violently twitched and fell backwards. However, a faint smoke rose from the tangible body, and then it showed signs of dissipating. Chapter 21. A Genius in 1 Second Remembers Love. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan was familiar with the series of circumstances that occurred within the cabin. One was the roar of fear. It was practically a replay of Luo Nan's experience on the viaduct. And on the soul plane, a few more essential things were exposed. Looking at the other people's expressions, it was clear that they knew nothing about the spore. Then, there were the fallen fierce warriors. Luo Nan felt the unforeseen events that happened to the fierce soldier. This was because in the moment when he was forcefully pulled out of his body, this dark and incorporeal vibration penetrated his body, forcibly blasting his soul out. Looking at it now, this was truly a battering ram that acted directly on the soul plane. The fleshly body on the plane of reality was completely unable to defend against a single hammer strike. It directly struck the soul. It was filled with the meaning of the mystic arts. The fierce soldier clearly didn't have the ability to leave his body. This time, things were probably far from good. Luo Nan's mind stirred. He had no enmity with the military's combat personnel. He didn't wish for someone to lose their life because of the inexplicable Darksider life form. He hesitated for a moment before issuing an order to the burning wraith for the first time since the fight began. The burning wraith was slightly sluggish within the cabin. Right now it was driving the dark flames to burn away all the surrounding binding forces, allowing it to regain its freedom. Moreover, its strength had increased explosively. But Luo Nan's order reached its core plane through the chains, making it hard for it to refuse. The burning wraith split off a streak of bloody light to roll up the overflowing smoke from the fierce soldier's body, forcibly stuffing it back in. It circled around in the air, ignoring the exploding clouds of fire as if they were nothing. It carried the red light of the dark flames as it escaped from the cabin. And at this time, Luo Nan's soul body was silently following a distance of over a dozen meters. According to Lu Tao's words, the military used the shadow mist to detect the Darksider life form. This was to observe each information waveband to see whether or not it had a tendency to interfere with changes on the plane of reality. Luo Nan didn't understand the calculation method involved, but he knew that even if he was forced by the burning wraith to do something beyond his abilities, he was able to maintain his current state for a long time. This was mostly due to his own format. His soul was in the out-of-body state. He naturally had a tendency to interfere with reality. Otherwise, he would be in the chaotic darkness, and he would become inhuman. How was this possible? In this way, it was very possible that he was a natural signal source within the shadow mist. If he and the burning wraith were to go in the opposite direction, it would be unknown who would be the first to be caught. Since he couldn't create a diversion, he could only pull the wool over everyone's eyes. He pulled the chain, maintaining a distance that was neither too far nor too close. He followed behind the burning wraith, at the same time carefully adjusting his route. Although the current burning wraith was still at a level that ordinary people's eyes couldn't see, however, due to the frequent interference of the real world, the military's detection system could be said to be blazing with a fierce light. The well-trained soldiers outside only lagged behind for about half a second before they turned their guns and used that special fire cloud to seal off the corridor. However, the burning wraith used the move, Fearful Roar. It used a peculiar method to absorb other people's fearful emotions for its own use. Its strength rose explosively for a time. It was a bit strenuous for Luo Nan to control it, let alone these soldiers who could only rely on special equipment to deal with the enemy. Even though the fire cloud pervaded most of the long corridor, the burning wraith still walked how it wanted to walk. It occasionally used the siege hammer to shoot. Even though Luo Nan suppressed it over and over again, it didn't cause as much damage as the first strike. However, those who were hit would fall into a state of unconsciousness. They didn't even know what was going on when facing an invisible enemy. Such a treacherous situation really was an absolute test of the willpower of the human heart. Even soldiers who had gone through strict training were able to maintain uninterrupted firepower according to the drill manual. It was hard to avoid the feelings of fear and panic in their hearts. This was a difficult knot to unravel when facing the burning wraith. So much so that the number of strange spores in the long corridor increased once more. They didn't just come from the bodies of the collapsed rich kids. They also came from the bodies of the soldiers in battle. Large amounts of spores floated up, infected, and exchanged. The magic of fear was like an avalanche. It pressed down on everyone present. The combat formation formed by the elite soldiers and the rhythm of the successive firepower had already shown visible disarray. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8. Including the one who was still lying in the cabin, there were 9 well-trained elite soldiers dressed in advanced exoskeleton armor. They formed a combat squad that was enough to contend against powerful mutants in the wilderness. But under the fierce might of the burning wraith, they actually didn't have the strength to fight back. Luo Nan observed this scene. His mood was a bit complicated. Just this morning, he was still a suspect who had been forcibly detained by the police. He could only obediently act like a grandson when faced with violence. But after a short few hours, his Dominator's strength already possessed the ability to directly defeat a small elite squad of the military. This strength was powerful and terrifying. It was mysterious and realistic. However, one could infer from the scene before their eyes that the planetary government was in a terrible mess when faced with the wilderness, faced with the mutant, and faced with the Darksider life form. Luo Nan wasn't a good child who worried about the country and the people, but he remembered a sentence: every person was only 300 kilometers away from the wilderness. On this planet, every person faced the threat of the mutant. And now it looked like this threat was much greater than what the government and the media usually publicized. In the end, Luo Nan didn't have a melancholic temperament. He quickly recovered from his emotional state and slightly controlled the fierce flames of the burning wraith. At the same time, he corrected his path and prepared to continue piercing through walls to return to his body. But the burning wraith transmitted a restless reaction in the next moment. It was just a hair slower than the burning wraith. Luo Nan had an inexplicable feeling as well. He shifted his attention, but he heard a wave of muffled footsteps. At the end of the long corridor was a bright color like the azure sea. It turned a corner and approached step by step. It was also an exoskeleton armor. The head was a bit flat, and it had a multi-angular helmet. It was once known as the most masculine exoskeleton design. But from Luo Nan's perspective, it was like a praying mantis pouncing on its prey. The reflection of light from every corner possessed a penetrating power like the edge of a blade. A low and fine hissing sound rang from the back of this completely sealed helmet. At the same time, the exoskeleton's shoulders, chest, abdomen, ribs, and every other part of the four limbs all had minute deformations. The entire armor seemed to have expanded by a size in an instant. And marvelous patterns of light began to appear on the coating layer of the armor. They appeared flat, circular, hyperbolic, and all sorts of other shapes. Fine electric currents seemed to be leaping about on the outer shell of the armor. But upon closer inspection, how could it be electric currents? It was clearly a layer of fine interweaving flames. They stuck rigidly to the outer shell of the armor that was deep blue like the sea. Only the dazzling light of the flames swayed faintly. Deep blue walker. Archetype format form. Many thoughts jumped in Luo Nan's mind in succession. Finally, they all came to one place, format of fire. Before this thought had even finished, a translucent light of fire sprinkled out from the body of the deep blue walker that advanced with large strides. The quality was crystal clear, like a soundless overflowing wave of water. It pushed through the long corridor and interweaved with the all-encompassing cloud of fire emitted by the military. An astonishing reaction was produced in an instant. Chapter 22. Genius in 1 second. Remember Love Go. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Gurgle. Gurgle. Luo Nan could clearly hear the clamorous sound of boiling water. In fact, the majority of the long corridor was filled with fire clouds that were boiling. The swelling and bursting dark red bubbles were piled together. At first glance, it looked like a lava lake in the ground. But from the perspective of the burning wraith, these bubbles were like a strong detergent with a barrel-rolling effect. The spores stirred up by the roaring of fear were immediately annihilated the moment they came into contact with the boiling fire clouds. Even the power that was already operating effectively, such as the gloomy dark flames that revolved around the wraith's body, also received enormous interference. A vortex formed in the void. 3 types of flames. Whether it was the burning wraith, the deep blue walker, or the flames released by the soldiers, as long as they were sucked into the vortex, there would be no reaction. If this was all, then the burning wraith wouldn't be considered to have fallen into a disadvantage. But the problem was, who would want to fight you one-on-one on this military transport ship? A muffled bang rang out. A blue light suddenly burst forth from a certain cabin on the side of the corridor. A robust figure rushed out from the side. It was actually another deep blue walker. Its propulsion system had clearly been pushed to the limit. It was much more valiant than the previous one, directly pouncing forward. The alloy dagger in its hand was raised horizontally. The same translucent format of fire flickered on its surface. So accurate. Luo Nan nearly suspected whether or not this slayer possessed the ability to directly perceive the Darksider life form. The direction of the dagger's edge was actually cutting straight at the area where the burning wraith was located. It was near the center. The burning wraith's reaction was a bit slow. Perhaps the distance between the two was too close, or perhaps it lacked a sense of danger from a physical attack. Only when the fiery light of the dagger neared its body did it blur its figure in an attempt to dodge. In the end, it was still too late. No matter if it was the outer layer of gloomy dark flames or the inner layer of near-nothingness of the shadow wraith, a long scar that could be seen with the naked eye was directly cut open. Everything within was transformed into nothingness. On Luo Nan's side, the information transmitted by the burning wraith suddenly turned chaotic. Then a ruthless power burst forth. The burning wraith's vicious nature had already been aroused. It completely disregarded Luo Nan's previous orders. The siege hammer no longer held back and directly struck. The Slayer's protective format of fire abruptly darkened, and its body, which was still gliding through the air, lost control. It crashed into the metal wall of the long corridor with a loud bang, leaving a few shallow dents in the sturdy alloy. Many people exclaimed in surprise. But with this collision, the exoskeleton armor weighing hundreds of kilograms bounced back. The protective flames on his body dimmed even more, and the flames on the dagger in his hand almost solidified. Like this, he leapt into the air and swung his saber again. Oh no! Luo Nan cursed inwardly. It looked like this blade had deviated quite a bit from the previous strike. It had only swept to the periphery of the burning wraith. But that tyrannical and fierce will had already converged and linked up with the format of fire, directly attacking the core of the burning wraith. Receiving 2 consecutive strikes, especially the last saber strike, directly caused the burning wraith's reaction to become disordered, and it froze on the spot. Love goes small say net sure enough, although this thing looked ferocious, it was actually most afraid of going against a firm and strong will. It had been subdued by UCI before, and now it was stupefied by a single saber strike. Of course, the Slayer's situation wasn't good either. After that saber strike, it directly smashed flat onto the floor, sliding into a corner, and stopped moving. Save him. At this time, the first Deep Blue Walker to enter the field and control the field gave a loud order. At the same time, he seized the opportunity to control the format of fire, causing the already imposing fiery cloud vortex to encircle and crush the burning wraith. But perhaps the chaotic situation in the long corridor gave birth to misgivings in his heart. The surrounding fiery cloud vortex couldn't be considered particularly tight, and a certain problem appeared in his judgment of the burning wraith's position. It just so happened that Luo Nan had given the burning wraith a stimulus at this time, forcing it to awaken from its stupefied state. The burning wraith didn't care about revenge or anything. It simply transformed into a rainbow of light, forcefully breaking through the weakest point of the fiery cloud. Then it tunneled through the ground, directly passing through the body of a rich second generation, and entered the lower deck of the warship. The central AI's judgment was as sharp as before, but the rich second generation lying on the ground in the long corridor acted as human shields, making it hard to continue the follow-up measures. It could only order a second wave of interceptions. The first Deep Blue Walker to enter the field shook his head. He had no intention of pursuing. He took off his sealed helmet, revealing a handsome and solemn face. It was none other than Yan Yongbua. At this time, the medic went to look at the fighter on the ground, whose life or death was unknown. But before they could truly make contact, the fighter suddenly flipped over and sat up. He pushed the medic aside, and then a heavy fist smashed onto the floor. The fighter's emotions were completely displayed with resentment and fury. Yan Yongbua walked forward. His usually grave and stern face revealed a smile for the first time. He extended his hand towards the fighter. Captain He, controlling your emotions is the #1 task when dealing with the Darksider life form. Moreover, you've already done it to perfection just now. I know very well how I've done things. The fighter simply didn't pay attention to Yan Yongbua's good intentions. Its voice was low and cold. Then it used the assistance system to stand up and recalibrated its armor. Captain He, the fighter turned the translucent panel of its helmet around to face Yan Yongbua. Quantum Corporation's professional quality can be considered trustworthy. I hope we can cooperate in the future and reduce unnecessary mistakes. I treasure this time very much. Yan Yongbua faintly smiled. That's only natural. The fighter turned around and left. Yan Yongbua followed behind. He carefully savored the low and hoarse voice and the special flavor that belonged exclusively to a woman. He also pondered over whether or not there was any other meaning to her words. Several seconds later, he hung his head down and used the company's public channel to give his subordinates a reminder: the target's strength is strong. Everyone, when cooperating with the military, the first task is stability. Blackie, especially you. don't be impatient and rush forward. First, be a good support. Blackie naively replied, I know. I'm watching. According to wartime regulations, all non-military communication channels were either blocked or monitored. They weren't allowed to speak carelessly either. Yan Yongbo's words and actions quickly drew a warning from command. But since there wasn't any sensitive information within, and it coincided with the military's position on Quantum Corporation, the criticism was just routine business. Only Yan Yongbo and Blackie, the two people involved, understood the true meaning within, delay the operation for now. Observe and wait for changes. Yan Yongbo hung his head down. His mind spun. Today was truly a lucky day. I actually got the chance to get to know and interact with Captain He. Compared to this koi that could ascend the Dragon's Gate at any moment, the malnourished little cub of the Luo family could be put aside for now. There were many ways to probe a child's background. But today's good opportunity wouldn't come again if it was lost. No matter what, he had to leave a good impression in the eyes of Captain He. Yep, putting in a bit more effort wasn't a big deal. Chapter 23. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shoa.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Yan Yongbo had indeed fulfilled his promise. In the following period of time, he followed Captain He and the military's small team of burners. They rushed to every deck and corner of the transport ship in pursuit of the Darksider life form. This pursuit continued for around half an hour. The Darksider life form even charged out of the ship's hull in the end in an attempt to escape. But in the end, the 5 deep blue walkers joined forces to surround and kill him. Captain He even obtained the opportunity to strike a fatal blow for revenge. The chaos on the warship finally subsided. However, Luo Nan's soul body had already quietly returned to the confinement room while this chaos was still flourishing. The heavy metal door isolated the clamor of the outside world. In the confinement room, the main body was still sitting. The tip of the pen was still on the paper. His eyes were half closed, as if he was in a trance. Luo Nan had never observed himself from this angle before. He just felt that it was peerlessly bizarre for a time. He felt that it was like a lifetime had passed. But right now the burning wraith was already powerless to supply energy to Luo Nan. The chill within his soul had accumulated within his body. It was extremely uncomfortable. Luo Nan didn't waste any time. His soul directly returned to his body. The embarrassing scene of passing through his body that he was most worried about did not happen. When his soul was close to his body, the boundary between reality and illusion appeared in a trance, manifesting into his visualization diagram, a tetrahedron with its inscribed circumscribed sphere. The inner sphere wrapped around the 5 viscera and 6 bowels, and the tetrahedron divided the inner and outer boundaries. When the soul came into contact with the outer sphere, it turned into a faint light and entered the head of the body. Some kind of restrictive feeling pressed down on him, but correspondingly, it felt like he was wearing a thick armor, and he felt inexplicably at ease. This feeling lasted for less than half a minute before disappearing. The legendary, out-of-body experience also came to an end for the time being. Love Go Small Say Nekaluo Nan's body began to move. He pinched the shaft of his pen and slightly swayed his neck. He adapted once more to the state where his body and soul were one. Judging from the current situation, the skeleton was indeed the carrier and armor of the soul. At the very least, it was inevitable that the skeleton was a power plant. As for the astral projection, it was just like traveling. Without sufficient capital, it was better to be cautious. In reality, without the burning wraith, if he wanted to leave his body, he really would have to consider it carefully. The burning wraith was done for. It hadn't been long since the spirit and flesh had become one, but the burning wraith had sunk into a land of death. The continuous attacks had already far surpassed the limits of what it could bear. Moreover, it had also encountered the slayer it feared the most. The format of fire and the tyrannical will had fused together, causing fatal damage to it. Losing the burning wraith was of course a pity, but compared to his own life, what was the big deal? Luo Nan took a deep breath. Though his soul had already returned to his body, there was still a test before him. At a level that ordinary people couldn't see, the heavily chained crow was gradually retracting, like a snake that had retreated into a deep hole to hibernate. So far, he hadn't attracted anyone's attention. But Luo Nan couldn't afford to be careless in the slightest before he could completely retrieve it. Retrieving the heavily chained crow took a total of around 10 seconds. But from Luo Nan's perspective, it felt like 10 years had passed. Luo Nan faintly felt that there were some subtle changes on top of the heavily chained crow, but he didn't have the mood to think too much about it. He maintained his drawing posture all the way until the chains were completely retracted, returning to nirvana along with the visualization diagram. Occasionally, he would draw a few lines that even he himself couldn't make heads or tails of. He silently waited. He really didn't know whether or not the deep blue walker would break through the door in the next second and press the muzzle of a gun against his head. Nothing happened 5 minutes later. Luo Nan was finally able to let out a long sigh of relief. He looked at the notebook once more. The perfectly fine sketch of the prison building had already been destroyed by his subconscious scribbling. This was fine as well. Luo Nan closed the notebook, raised his head, and closed his eyes. He leaned against the back of the chair, wanting to empty his mind and truly relax for a moment. But who knew that a prompt would ring out in the next second? The metal door slid open amidst the crackling sound of electricity. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes. His body nearly sprung up, but in the end, he still slowly relaxed after a moment of stiffness. He sat up, pretending to be at a loss as he looked toward the door. As for whether or not he was pretending, only the heavens knew. Luo Nan let out a breath of relief when he saw the person at the door. It wasn't a deep blue walker. It wasn't any fully armed combat personnel either. It was the captain who had brought him here before. You. Come with me. The captain's tone was quite calm as he indicated for Luo Nan to follow him. Luo Nan didn't think too much about it. He got up and followed. He boarded the transport device with the captain and entered the internal communications line. Luo Nan maintained his silence within the completely sealed transport device. He had always had an introverted temperament of few words. It was fine for him to sit like this for an entire day if others didn't take the initiative to talk. In the end, the captain had to give some instructions. The police have already boarded the ship. The investigation will begin immediately. You're a minor. There are many rules. Go see a lawyer right now and make some preparations. Lawyer? Luo Nan was a bit baffled. You guys hired him. It has nothing to do with our military. The captain gave a simple response. The transport device arrived at another area of the warship at this time. Some arrangements had already been made here. Luo Nan took a cursory glance and saw that there was an interrogation room, a waiting room, an analysis room, and so on. There were also all sorts of sampling and analysis equipment. There were so many of them that they appeared to be quite well organized. Most of the people operating in this area didn't wear the most common gray military uniform of the Air Force. Instead, they wore the black uniforms of the Xia City Police. The captain didn't stop. He led Luo Nan to a room in the corner of the area. He knocked on the door and pushed it open, indicating for Luo Nan to enter. The room was a bit noisy. A woman wearing a business suit leaned against the edge of the table. Her head was lowered as she fiddled with the flexible screen in her hands. The AR effects of the flexible screen were clearly turned on to the max. The silhouette of a beast floated onto the screen, leaping and running. The light and shadow effects were quite gorgeous. The sound effects were quite astonishing as well, at least the howl of the beast sounded quite horrifying. Luo Nan actually recognized it. This was the worldwide popular 10 Days in the Wilderness. It was a phenomenal mobile game. Hold on. This level is quite difficult. The professional woman didn't even raise her head. She casually greeted him and used her finger to poke on the flexible screen. This absurd scene made the eyes of the captain who brought Luo Nan in twitch. Luo Nan didn't care. He nodded to the captain and went straight inside. The difficulty of 10 days in the wilderness was extremely high. It only took a few steps for the game character to be buried within the enormous maw of the mutant. The professional woman sighed and raised her head. A smile blossomed on her delicate and beautiful face. Hello. Luo Nan, right? I'm the lawyer entrusted by young Master Xia, Zhang Yingying. Oh, Xia Junping. Luo Nan wasn't the least bit shocked by this answer. Or perhaps it could be said that he had been waiting for this result all this time. Right now it looked like that good-for-nothing fellow hadn't disappointed him in the end. Chapter 24. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuanet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying snapped her fingers. It's good that you understand. Love goes small say netku. Such a frivolous and casual attitude was far from Luo Nan's impression of a lawyer. Luo Nan felt that compared to Xia Junping sending a lawyer to help, Xia Junping sending a lawyer over was truly shocking. Next, Zhang Yingying's explanation of this matter allowed Luo Nan to confirm this point. You were there when the accident happened in the R&D district. You should know that the military and the police are taking this very seriously. Due to the chaos over there, I don't have the energy to deal with small fries like you, and I can't do any screening either, so I can only temporarily escort you to the transport ship. Well, it can be considered a blessing in disguise. Luo Nan was dumbfounded as he looked at her. Where is the fortune? Zhang Yingying blinked. It's a blessing not to rely on either side. You're still underage, right? Thank goodness we intervened in time on the transport ship. Otherwise, if we went to the police station and followed the strict procedures, there's no way we could hide it from our family, hee. Luo Nan was left speechless. He had to admit that this young lawyer's words had hit the nail on the head. If his aunt were to find out about this matter, the scene would be truly unimaginable. Zhang Yingying was finally satisfied when she saw Luo Nan's expression change. She said, "It's not just this. Did you know about the chaos on the warship just now?" "I feel it." Luo Nan answered very straightforwardly. The shadow mist still pervaded the confinement room. Even a fool would know that there was a problem. You've got guts. I've seen the surveillance footage they sent. There's smoke everywhere, and you're alone. Yet, you're still so calm. You're still writing and drawing. It's rare, young man. I like young people like you the most. Zhang Yingying reached out her hand and smacked Luo Nan's shoulder with force, causing his somewhat stiff muscles to scatter. Zhang Yingying ignored Luo Nan's subtle emotions and continued to speak. I arrived on the ship 2 hours ago. I wasn't able to meet with you for a while because the government and the military are nervous. They're afraid that there's a problematic person hidden among you. They don't allow the outside world to come into contact with you. But as soon as this mess broke out, they knew that it was stupid to isolate the inside from the outside, so they began to change their strategy. It was indeed rather difficult to seal the Darksider life form. Luo Nan's thoughts flowed. He was a bit absent-minded. Zhang Yingying put on an act and coughed, so you need to pay attention. Isolating the inside from the outside. You look like you're being heavily guarded, but in reality, you're just trying to be lazy. In essence, you don't care about small fish and shrimps like you. Now that you're letting go, it doesn't mean that you're giving up. Instead, it means that you have the mentality of sifting through the ranks. They're going to be much more serious than they were in the beginning. Luo Nan nodded silently. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. The captain from before had returned. Lawyer Zhang, please get ready. It's finally my turn. Zhang Yingying stood up straight. She wore high heels. She was half a head taller than Luo Nan, who had yet to finish puberty. She had a threatening aura at first glance. It was a pity that her immature cheeks and energetic smile were incompatible with her serious professional attire. She looked at Luo Nan's taut face and blinked. Are you nervous? Do you usually watch movies? Luo Nan almost couldn't keep up with her train of thought. He only answered a second later, occasionally. In the movies, what do the villains say when they face the police? Please talk to my lawyer. Bingo. Zhang Yingying slapped Luo Nan's shoulder with force once more. She took the lead and walked out. Luo Nan stared at the slender figure of the female lawyer. One conclusion was already clear: no matter what her true goal was, this lawyer Zhang was not someone that Xie Junping could control. What are you standing there for? Let's go. Let's get this over with. Zhang Yingying urged Luo Nan from the front. Luo Nan laughed and followed her out. The stream of people in the temporarily opened interrogation area seemed to have increased a bit during the time they were talking. Xie Junping had hired a lawyer for Luo Nan. Naturally, the rich kids, as well as the other prisoners, wouldn't fight alone. According to Zhang Yingying, the private lawyers of the rich kids had already consciously formed a temporary team to negotiate with the police. Strictly speaking, Zhang Yingying was also a member of this temporary team. It was just that she had never taken it seriously before. The military personnel automatically withdrew upon entering the interrogation area. The police took over and conducted all sorts of sample tests. Luo Nan didn't say a word from beginning to end. He did whatever he was told to do. He was extremely cooperative. The calculations of the government and the military were roughly the same as Zhang Yingying's judgment. Therefore, the police's attitude was extremely serious as the executors. Therefore, Zhang Yingying's grand words of "getting this over with" were just words. All sorts of inspections, all sorts of interrogations, all sorts of procedures had to be completed. This even included dealing with the firepower of the other lawyers. Li Xuecheng was still lying in the medical department of the warship, undergoing treatment. His family certainly wouldn't let this matter rest. Of course, they couldn't eliminate the possibility of using this to divert attention. This wasn't Luo Nan's area of expertise. Fortunately, he had Zhang Yingying by his side. Though the bold words of "a quick and decisive battle" were ruined, the young female lawyer displayed a powerful strength that was able to discern man's talent without any hindrances. Of course, Luo Nan didn't understand the negotiations behind the scenes, causing all the firepower to be like thunder but little raindrops. They were silently annihilated. From Luo Nan's perspective, the entire interrogation process was nothing more than repeating the events from when he left his home in the morning to when he was arrested 7 or 8 times. Then, he cleared the stage. Oh my, what a waste of time. Zhang Yingying walked out of the interrogation room with large strides. She ignored the expressions of the surrounding police officers and let out a long sigh. She casually lifted the sapphire blue scarf around her neck a bit, revealing half of her snow-white chest. Right now, a full 10 hours had passed since their entrance. The marathon schedule really was exhausting. Fortunately, Luo Nan had ordered 2 large nutritious meals in between to replenish his energy. He could be considered to have made it through the most difficult period. Zhang Yingying clapped her hands. Okay, the matter has been resolved perfectly. The police will only leave behind a file for future inquiries. The main focus is still on the matter with the R&D district. As for the so-called personal injury, here, relax. There won't be any repercussions. The world of the rich. Luo Nan was like a normal nationalistic youth. He snorted coldly in his heart. Then I can leave now. Not yet. It's impossible for a warship to land for you alone. A landing craft also costs money. So you still need to wait for those people to finish their interrogation before you can leave. It seems like yeah. You're the first. So you still have to wait. Luo Nan sighed soundlessly. At this time, his heart inexplicably sensed something. He turned his head and saw a transport vehicle dragging a few disassembled exoskeleton armors pass by not too far away. A swift and fierce man with a dark complexion and a buzz cut was on top of the vehicle. His gaze fell upon Luo Nan's face. He didn't conceal his coldness at all. It was the same even when Luo Nan met his gaze. Chapter 25. A genius in 1 second remembers love. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Weirdo. Luo Nan moved his gaze away and swept over the exoskeleton armor on the vehicle. There were no obvious markings, but the special blue paint already made clear the answer: deep blue walkers. Moreover, they were the non-military kind. 90% of the world's deep blue walkers were in the military. This was without a doubt. But as the developer of the Deep Blue platform, Quantum Corporation possessed a few of these so-called experimental models. This was a matter of course. It was just that Quantum Corporation's Deep Blue walkers were not allowed to be equipped with weapons of mass destruction. They had fewer modules, and their physiques appeared quite skinny. They were also equipped with a few auxiliary equipment, such as flow deflector fins. These small details could be hidden from others, but they could not be hidden from Luo Nan. He was even able to find the one that he had once crossed paths among these exoskeleton armors that looked completely identical. The second from the left was the field controller. He was the first to engage in combat with the burning wraith, and he played an extremely crucial role in the final encirclement. Luo Nan's eyes slightly narrowed. The system layout and parameters of the Deep Blue walkers were undoubtedly highly classified. Only bits and pieces could be pieced together from many channels. Perhaps not many people had seen the Deep Blue walkers in their current state. They had just been unloaded. They had yet to be boxed up. Luo Nan clutched his own notebook. He wanted to immediately pick up a pen and completely draw down all the details of this piece of equipment, but at this time, the swift and fierce dark-faced man on the vehicle cast an even colder gaze over. Then he performed an operation. An invisible membrane flipped over from the vehicle, covering and sealing all of the armor. Luo Nan was a bit startled. Then he shrugged his shoulders. Are the people of Quantum Corporation all this petty? He seems to be from Quantum Corporation. You're familiar with him? Zhang Yingying suddenly asked. Luo Nan answered honestly, I don't know him. Then what are you staring blankly for? Let's go. Zhang Yingying urged him from the side, pulling him back to the previous room. She let out a long sigh after entering the room. She turned around and leaned against the edge of the office desk. She stretched her waist. Dealing with those bureaucrats and litigators is really annoying. Luo Nan was speechless towards this female litigator. What was more, he stood in the room, not knowing what to do. Zhang Yingying giggled and pointed at him. You did well just now, so I'll give you a gift. Look, this is the cabin. Don't be dissatisfied. The entire starship has only temporarily lifted the restriction on external communication in this area. Otherwise, how can we play the game? Luo Nan subconsciously glanced at his wristband. Sure enough, the communication and network functions were unblocked. What's with these dozens of missed calls? Flipping through it roughly, he found that most of them were from his cousin, Mo Ya. Starting from the morning, there were 25 of them in total. Then, from 7 p.m. onwards, my aunt also had 3 records. It was already 10 p.m., Luo Nan just felt his scalp go numb. He was unable to think of anything else. He hurriedly made a call back. Naturally, he was looking for his usual accomplice, Miss Mo Ya. Sister? Nan? Mo Ya's voice was filled with uncertainty. Sister, what's the matter, what's the matter? What have you been doing all day? He didn't pick up my calls, I couldn't find him at school, and I couldn't find him at home. I was ready to call the police, did you know that? Moya's high-pitched rock and roll voice was like a sandstorm, covering the sky and the sun. It was also like the explosion of a nuclear bomb, burning with rage. Why didn't you go to class? Why didn't he take the club exam? You tricked me yesterday, didn't you? Luo Nan, you've grown up. You're just outside by yourself, and you're already having fun. Luo Nan was instantly showered with a torrent of abuse. The intense penetrative sound broke through the sound reception effect of his wristband and reverberated throughout the entire room. Zhang Yingying whistled and looked up at the ceiling with an innocent expression of, "I don't know anything." Luo Nan didn't care about the awkwardness. He walked away a bit and reported the current situation to his cousin. Today's matter, as long as the burning wraith and the other elements were excluded, it was completely his bad luck. There was nothing to hide. After Mo Ye vented her accumulated uneasiness and anger, she was still able to listen to his explanation. However, she didn't feel the slightest bit of sympathy for Luo Nan's misfortune. Sticking together with that trash Xia Junping serves you right for being unlucky. If you don't learn your lesson, you'll suffer in the future. The Mystic Arts Research Society is more or less like this. It's fine if you can't go. Huh? Luo Nan suddenly came to a realization. He had undoubtedly missed the Mystic Arts Research Society's entrance interview today. But how did his cousin know? Looking at the caller ID, Mo Ye was quite restrained in the morning. She only called 2 times, but starting from 4:30 in the afternoon when the club activities began, she called once every 10 minutes on average. Clearly, she only reacted after knowing that he missed the exam. Mo Ye clenched her teeth and sneered, "I know you're stupid. You thought of an acquaintance over there, so you asked them for help. The problem right now is that you directly missed the exam and stood them up. You're stepping on my face and rubbing it on the ground. Also, you didn't pick up my mother's phone call. It was me who risked my life to say that you needed to do an experiment for the club exam. You better make up this lie for me. Otherwise you're dead. No one can save you from the heavens or the earth." Luo Nan's heart warmed. He knew that his sister had certainly done quite a bit of work in private. Directly missing the exam this time would indeed make things very awkward. He blurted out, "Then I'll treat you to a meal tomorrow as an apology." Mo Ye sneered, "You don't have to treat me. But let me tell you something. Stay away from that circle. That group of bastards have a lifetime of squandering wealth as a foundation. But you don't have anything. I don't want to use the family property I'll inherit in the future to help an idiot like you." The final conversation between the sister and brother had nothing to do with familial love, but Luo Nan had long since become accustomed to his cousin's way of speaking. He didn't mind it. He also learned that Mo Ye was guarding his apartment in Blue Bay community right now. Naturally, he thanked her profusely. Mo Ye completely disdained this. She said in a loud voice, "I'm going to the show." Then she hung up the phone. Mo Ye had formed a band with other people since her university days. She already had a bit of fame in the Xia City area and was currently on the rise. She was busiest every night, but today she was guarding the apartment for Luo Nan's sake, waiting for news. There was no need to say how much face she had given up. But Luo Nan couldn't help but grimace when he thought of the task his cousin had arranged for him. He pondered for a moment, but he still plucked up the courage to give his aunt a call. He didn't dare to mention today's matter. He just used Mo Ye's lie to fabricate a reason that the interview needed to test his experimental abilities. As for the exam results, he could only say vaguely that the results would come out tomorrow. He had to deal with it first. It wasn't good for him to turn on a video call. He couldn't tell if his aunt believed him or not from the phone. He just felt that his aunt was quite easy to talk to tonight. She even let him rest early. He had inexplicably passed the test. Perhaps his aunt felt that there was some misunderstanding because he was hesitating about the exam results. That would be for the best. Chapter 26. Genius 1 second. Remember love go divided by small. TalkNet provides you with wonderful novels to read. In any case, this phone call wasn't much different from a harsh entrance exam. Luo Nan let out a breath of relief after hanging up. He relaxed all of a sudden. Love go small. TalkNet. He turned his head to look at Zhang Yingying and unexpectedly discovered that she was flipping through the notebook he had casually placed on his seat. The page she flipped to was the distorted sketch of the prison building. Though it had already been destroyed by Luo Nan's unconscious messy lines, Zhang Yingying still looked at it extremely seriously. She even used her hand to trace the direction of the lines. Luo Nan frowned and coughed. Zhang Yingying raised her head. She wasn't embarrassed at all. Instead, she asked him with interest, "This is a fantasy diagram, right? Why did you draw it? Was it because you felt something while sitting in the confinement room? What does the distorted layout represent? And what do those tools of violence symbolize? The outer lines are also very interesting." Luo Nan originally wanted to refuse to answer, but when he saw Zhang Yingying's expression, he suddenly thought of the subtle attitude she had displayed from time to time ever since they met. A sensitive chord suddenly plucked at his heart. Luo Nan looked at Zhang Yingying once more with a completely different gaze. He swept his gaze up and down with a few more probing thoughts. "Hey, is this hard to say? I just felt that I should draw it this way. The feeling came, so I just drew it this way." Luo Nan was simply spouting nonsense, but Zhang Yingying was actually very satisfied with this sort of answer. "Feeling it. This is very good." Luo Nan grew more and more curious towards Zhang Yingying, but he didn't want his notebook to remain in her hands for too long. He reached out and took it back, minding his own business as he sat back in his seat. It looked like he didn't want to talk much, but Luo Nan was actually pondering over how to further prove his own judgment. And at this time, he heard Zhang Yingying call out, "Hey, want to play around?" Luo Nan raised his head and saw Zhang Yingying raise her flexible screen to indicate to him, 10 days of combat is the essence. It's much more enjoyable than playing solo. Luo Nan wasn't in the mood to play, so he casually declined. But Zhang Yingying was especially insistent. Right now she was just a lively and playful young girl. Her mental age seemed to be even younger than Luo Nan's. Come on, it's killing time. Looking at the police's progress, it might not be over in another 7 to 8 hours. We'll be lucky if we can go home at 5 in the morning. At that time, just send me directly to school. Don't worry, I won't throw you off the warship. The question now is, are we going to play? Zhang Yingying had an impatient appearance. Luo Nan still wanted to refuse, but he suddenly changed his mind when the words reached his mouth, "Then let's play a few rounds. Let me say this in advance. I really don't know how to play. It's okay. I'm just killing time." Zhang Yingying was beaming with joy. She looked casual and innocent, which was very different from her previous pretentious attitude. She immediately placed her flexible screen in front of Luo Nan for fear that he would refuse. Come. Let's memorize it first. The 10 days battle is controlled through hand gestures. You should understand this, right? Yes, I know a little. Love go small say netku. Luo Nan saw the flashing layers of green light on the flexible screen. He hesitated for a moment, but he still placed his hands on the screen in turn. Soon, the notification sound of the scan being completed rang out. Zhang Yingying snapped her fingers. Done. Huh. I'm saying, let the battle begin. Zhang Yingying spread out the flexible screen as she spoke. She placed it on the office table in the room and sat to the other side, facing Luo Nan across the table. She dimmed the lights in the room, making it quite formal. As the command was issued, light waves were projected on the screen. A layer of light blue arc-shaped light film with a radius of nearly 1 meter spread out from the dome. The shades of color changed, and a suitable color scheme successfully constructed the game background of red earth and blue sky, a vast and desolate scene. Just by looking at the augmented reality AR special effects, one could tell that Zhang Yingying's flexible screen was certainly one of the top brands in the market. It was actually able to turn a portable mobile game like 10 Days in the Wilderness into a medium-scale wargame. Luo Nan sat upright outside of the game area. He looked at the vast wilderness, condensed on a tabletop. Virtual characters wearing all sorts of exoskeleton armors shuttled back and forth. It would be a lie to say that his heart was like still water. He was only 16 years old. Playing games was human nature. How could he be completely immune to it? His heart was itching to give it a try when he saw the exquisite game screen. For a moment, he wanted to blend in and truly roam the wilderness. For a moment, he wanted to wantonly smear destruction on it. The subtleties of the human heart could not be more than this. Yes, he played games too little. Zhang Yingying quickly chose her character in front of him. She crossed her fingers and propped up her chin with the back of her hand. She beamed as she waited for Luo Nan to choose. Don't be anxious. Take your time. I'll let you win. Luo Nan didn't spend too much time. 10 Days in the Wilderness was a phenomenal mobile game that swept the entire world. The highest number of people online at the same time was 970 million. No one had been able to break it to this day. Right now, it had begun to leave the mobile game domain and was released on various immersive game platforms. When he was still living at his aunt's house, he had been dragged by his siblings to play against each other. He possessed basic common sense. He only thought about it for a moment before choosing a classic hero that was relatively easy to pick up. The Earth Army's ace in firepower, Haya. The data showed that this robust officer, active in the late 80s, was a walking arsenal with the support of the military's fiery platform. Though his movement speed was slow, his violent and accurate firepower was enough to eliminate the majority of enemies from a distance of 500 meters. After the character selection was complete, the game automatically configured the battlefield. But when Zhang Yingying saw the character selection, she immediately shouted, "What's the meaning of this? Are you looking down on me?" Huh? It's fine if you don't choose Deep Blue. Fantasy, Mutant, which one is bad? Are you trying to deal with me by choosing a newbie character? There were over 100 characters to choose from in 10 Days in the Wilderness. They could be divided into 4 categories: the Standby class, Deep Blue class, Fantasy class, and Mutant class. The Standby class referenced military exoskeleton weapons platforms and famous battle heroes. The Deep Blue class referenced Quantum Corporation's Deep Blue platform's modifications. The Mutant class chose the most typical mutant species found in the wilderness. The Fantasy class was a fantasy weapon with a bold and unconstrained style. Though the game company did a great job of balancing things out, since they were referencing reality, they had to take care of reality. Out of the 4 categories, the Standby class characters were undoubtedly the weaker ones. They completely relied on their character's charm and the newbie characteristics of being easy to pick up. In online cooperative mode, the popularity of the Standby class uncles was quite decent. But in PvP mode, unless it was a newbie delivering food and an expert oppressing a chicken, generally speaking, no one would choose this category. Luo Nan shot a glance at Zhang Yingying. The corner of his mouth twitched when faced with her incomparably indignant attitude. "You're not choosing Deep Blue?" After a strange silence, Zhang Yingying clasped her hands together. She exaggeratedly elongated her voice and her eyes twinkled like stars. "Huh? You don't like the Deep Blue platform either?" "I hate the color blue the most. I get dizzy looking at it too much." Luo Nan shot a final glance at the female lawyer's sapphire blue scarf and lowered his head speechlessly. Chapter 27. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Showa.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The game interface had already begun to operate at this time. Luo Nan gradually came to a decision in his heart. He was already disinclined to get entangled with Zhang Yingying. He swept his eyes over the wind speed and temperature data and made a gesture to advance forward. Love Go Small Say Netkaheya and his pet, the mechanical dog Nubi, which carried 2 boxes of ammunition, chose the highest hill in the surrounding area and began to climb. Zhang Yingying curled her lips and crossed her arms in front of her chest. She didn't do anything at all. Her mutant character, Wind Glory, floated in the air as if everything was within her control. Luo Nan understood her intentions. She was abandoning tactical maneuverability and directly deciding victory head-on. This was undoubtedly the best situation for a character like Haya to display his combat strength. As a newbie, Luo Nan recognized this preferential treatment. He controlled Blacktooth to set up a weapons platform at the top of the hill. He paid the price of completely sacrificing his mobility to achieve maximum firepower. Luo Nan waited for everything to be prepared, but he didn't say anything. He just made a provocative gesture. Zhang Yingying curled her lips and changed her hand gesture for the first time. She controlled Wind Brilliance, which was like a giant poisonous bee, and dashed all the way. In the blink of an eye, she had already crossed the center line of the battlefield. At this time, the marked distance between them was 987 meters. 900, 800, 700, Haya's light electromagnetic gun began to rumble, drawing a bright trail in the sky. Zhang Yingying suddenly became excited and announced anxiously, "I will crush you." No matter how amusing Zhang Yingying was, her skill in controlling the game was certainly far above Luo Nan's. Wind Brilliance's enormous body charged forward and danced in and out of the increasingly dense bullet trajectories. Once it broke through the 500-meter life and death line, it changed its location a few times, and the bullet comments that it had worked so hard to weave were torn apart. Nubi was corroded by the venom, and his ammunition exploded. Heiyo was also swept across the neck by the transparent bee wings, KOING him. First blood. Across the desk, Zhang Yingying wagged her index finger at Luo Nan. "Should I change my character?" Luo Nan didn't say a word. He chose to restart the battle. Zhang Yingying accepted the challenge with a smile. While waiting for the battlefield configuration, she sensed something. She raised her head and saw Luo Nan's gaze pierce through the screen of light to fall on her face. It had been a long time since his gaze had moved. He raised his chin slightly and winked at her. "What do you think? Beautiful, right?" As for whether it was his appearance or his operating skills, that was up to the person to decide. Luo Nan didn't respond. His gaze slightly shifted away, but it didn't take long before it circled back. Miss Zhang Yingying was a natural beauty and was not afraid of being stared at. Moreover, there was a game in front of her, so she had to wait until she was satisfied. In the enclosed room, light and shadow intertwined and blurred. Time flew by in another form. Once the battle in the wilderness began, it never stopped. Then, a call came in to inform Zhang Yingying of the latest news. "Finished. What time is it?" "TSK, they really fought through the night." The counter at the bottom of the screen showed the number of games, game time, and real time at the same time. Love Go Small Say Netkuit could be seen that it was already 4:50 in the morning on the 28th. Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying had already fought over 200 rounds, consuming nearly 7 hours. It is indeed a divine creation that kills time. Luo Nan took a few deep breaths. Not only was he not tired from playing for a long time, his brain was in a state of extreme excitement. Right now he had to do something. Luo Nan picked up his notebook, flipped to a blank page, and began to write. In a short dozen or so seconds, the lines of the glittering pen had already sketched out a rough outline. It was still in the style of a sketch. He didn't ponder over the details, just drawing out the body movements of the characters and a more typical background. On the screen, a young girl with an indistinct face supported her cheek with one hand. Her other hand was making gestures. It looked a bit lazy at first glance, but the tension of her body told everyone, her mind was focused, and she was overflowing with interest. She was playing a game. Whether it was 10 days in the wilderness or drinking or playing finger-guessing, in short, it was the same flavor. She was still evaluating her opponent. Perhaps it was because of an intense desire to win, or perhaps it was because of some other goal. Luo Nan's pen paused a bit. He was certain that this was the effect he wanted. Luo Nan had already observed Zhang Yingying for a full 7 hours starting from 10 p.m. last night. Compared to his usual quick observation and quick mastery, this was undoubtedly an atypical method. However, Luo Nan believed that it was worth it. From his perspective, Zhang Yingying was absolutely an object worth recording. But there was one more thing that needed to be displayed. Luo Nan's pen paused, but he didn't start writing for a long time. It wasn't that he couldn't grasp it, but once he started writing, it would be the same as expressing a certain attitude. He could completely wait and observe. He faced the sketch and sank into contemplation. Zhang Yingying had already finished her call. She turned off the game's effects with a bit of regret and said to Luo Nan, "You can go home now. It's just that the phantom needs to be left behind as evidence." "Oh, right. You want to go straight to school. Don't you want to go home and sleep for a bit?" Luo Nan grunted and continued to ponder with his head lowered. The tip of his pen was about to fall, but he didn't. With Zhang Yingying's curiosity, how could she resist this? She immediately moved her head over to look, and then she was stupefied. She instinctively extended her hand to touch Luo Nan's forehead. "You want to hit on me, hey?" Luo Nan didn't dodge, nor did he raise his head. He allowed Zhang Yingying's warm palm to lightly press against his forehead. The tip of the pen in his hand sketched in greater detail. Kids these days matured this early. Zhang Yingying simply wanted to cover Luo Nan's eyes when she saw his cool appearance. But a subtle change in the notebook half a second later sucked away all of her attention. The special qualities of the luster pen actually didn't easily manifest the thickness of the shadows of the lines. But Luo Nan used the right amount of white space to reveal the long and narrow details of the lines. It was like a flowing band of clouds that curled around the young girl's body. It was like this. Even Zhang Yingying herself didn't realize that when she was high playing the game, the aura of her body would surge. Some things would be stripped of their concealment and revealed to the outside world. Perhaps an ordinary person might not be able to discover the mysteries within even if they were equipped with the most advanced scanning equipment. The problem was that ever since Luo Nan was brought along by the burning wraith, his soul had left his body for a walk. The perception of his eyes, ears, nose, and tongue had entered into a special mental plane. He was always able to see some inconceivable things. The room was extremely quiet. It was so quiet that the air seemed to have solidified. Luo Nan maintained his usual rhythm. He stopped writing and put away the pen. Then he connected the sensor pen to the pen tip and placed it back into the pen case. Then he pressed down on the not-so-sensitive pressing pad. He separated the metal ring rack and removed the draft. Having done all this, Luo Nan breathed in imperceptibly. He raised his head and handed over the draft with both hands. "Lawyer Zhang, I gift this drawing to you. Consider it as a token of thanks for today." For yesterday's matter." Zhang Yingying didn't respond in the first instance. She stared at the blurred drawing like she was looking at a mirror. She subconsciously raised her hand and compared it to the surface of the mirror. She reached back and touched the corresponding spot on her body. Her fingertips swept past. There was nothing there. Only her thoroughly tempered psychic senses received the corresponding feedback that originated from her body. "My white rainbow. This is what it looks like." Zhang Yingying was stunned for a full 10 seconds before she suddenly woke up with a start. Her gaze instantly nailed onto Luo Nan's face. "You. Psychic." Chapter 28. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go. Shoa.net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Which one? Even though Luo Nan had already made many preparations, he was still a bit stupefied by this sudden form of address. Zhang Yingying's gaze was like a sharp blade, slicing back and forth across Luo Nan's face. But in this instant, Luo Nan's reaction could not be any more real. In the end, she gained nothing. And at this time, Luo Nan recovered from his momentary bewilderment. His eyes immediately lit up. "A shaman. Ugh, I think I spilled the beans." Zhang Yingying laughed and said, "All right, I'll accept your kindness." She took the paper, using it to block Luo Nan's line of sight. But because of this, her eyes couldn't help but linger on the paper again. Every time she looked at it, she would meow out of curiosity or scratch it. It was so torturous. 2 seconds later, Zhang Yingying couldn't help but put the sketch aside and asked directly, "Why are you painting like this? What is a shaman?" Their gazes, questions, and curiosities collided in the void. The situation was tragic. Unfortunately, no one was willing to make the first move. For a moment, they stared at each other in a deadlock. Since Luo Nan was sitting, there was a relatively large height difference between him and Zhang Yingying. He tried to stand up. However, just as his butt was 2 centimeters away from the chair, Zhang Yingying unceremoniously slapped his shoulder. This little bitch had quite the strength. It was as if a heavy barbell was pressing down on Luo Nan's shoulder. His entire body was forcefully pressed back, and even the metal chair creaked. Zhang Yingying leaned her body forward, practically touching Luo Nan's face. Her posture looked extremely intimate, but she believed that Luo Nan could certainly feel the pressure she exerted. "Come, tell me, why are you painting like this?" "I don't remember." Zhang Yingying suddenly paused. She was, after all, a very intelligent person. She was just shocked by the sudden change. Now that she had calmed down, her brain was already working efficiently. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you testing me?" Zhang Yingying suddenly came to a realization that sketch was simply a trap Luo Nan had set for her. It was to probe her reaction. It was very clear that Luo Nan had already begun to suspect the purpose of her actions before he even started writing. Of course, suspicions were just suspicions. Luo Nan was able to skillfully and magnanimously use his own abilities to set up a trap for her. This was truly a pleasant surprise. Luo Nan sat on the chair. He didn't avoid looking at Zhang Yingying's beautiful face, which was already within reach. His gaze locked with hers, and his mood actually calmed down. "You were the one who investigated me first. Also, you said that I won't choose Deep Blue, because you think that I'll be jealous of Quantum Corporation's continuous production of results based on formatting theory? Then, you must have investigated my family, or at least know about my grandfather." Zhang Yingying rolled her eyes. "Has anyone ever told you that if you remember too many details from a young age, you'll be petty when you grow up? Chicks really do get smaller." After rambling for a while, Zhang Yingying admitted that she was a little angry, so she decided to throw her face to the Pacific Ocean. "If you really mind the investigation, let's continue. Student Luo Nan, aren't you going to talk about your experiences in applying abilities?" Luo Nan remained calm. "I don't know what the ability is called, what its nature is, and what level it is at. I don't know any of this. How could I have any insights?" Zhang Yingying was a bit stifled. She discovered that getting angry with the obstinate hero of darkness was a very meaningless action. There was simply no compromise option in Luo Nan's mind. Humph. Showing his cards on the table at the drop of a hat. No matter how much he pretends to be mature, he's still a little kid. After cursing a few times, Zhang Yingying still took a step back in the end. "I didn't expect you to be so lacking in knowledge. I just pity you. Actually, if you look it up on the internet, you'll know that psychics are fellows who can have intimate contact with ghosts, specters, and the like. These people can sense incorporeal objects that normal people are unable to touch, and they can communicate with them. Apart from this, there's nothing special about them. Are you satisfied?" Of course Luo Nan wasn't satisfied. If there really was nothing special about them, then why did she make such a fuss about nothing? "It's your turn." Zhang Yingying wasn't about to lose out. She tossed out her own question once more. "Why did you add a band of light to my portrait?" "A feeling." Luo Nan held back a bit. He patted his notebook. "I always have a special feeling when I face interesting material. Then I draw it out and strengthen it appropriately. Perhaps this is the psychic ability." Is there a ghost on your body?" "You're the one with a ghost." Though she said this, Zhang Yingying was still quite satisfied with Luo Nan's answer. According to what she knew, the vast majority of psychics in this world did indeed use various mediums and ritual methods to strengthen their originally vague feelings. In the end, they achieved the effect of communicating with the incorporeal. For example, Luo Nan was able to use a pen and paper to vividly display that feeling. Whether it was efficiency or practicality, he was already extremely powerful. It was absolutely not an exaggeration to describe him as gifted. It must be known that right now was the eruption period of the Darksider life form. Zhang Yingying pondered a bit about the application prospects of this ability and felt her entire being become excited. How long has it been since your ability awakened? Are there any more paintings like this? Luo Nan looked at her strangely. Shouldn't it be my turn to ask now? Then I'll ask. Aren't there many ability users like you, Lawyer Zhang? Do you communicate with each other? How do you train and cultivate normally? How are the levels of abilities divided? What stage is my ability in between you guys? If. Click. Zhang Yingying crossed her hands and decisively called a timeout. Next, she stood a bit further away and looked at Luo Nan from head to toe. She sized him up very seriously and seemed to have realized something. You really don't understand anything. However, you're very interested in the circle I'm in? Luo Nan didn't hesitate in the slightest. Yes. I'm extremely interested. Zhang Yingying blinked her eyes. Even if I'm in an evil organization or simply an extraordinary strength research institute, the kind that specializes in slicing and researching, would it still be the same? An organization? Luo Nan keenly grasped the key point and responded without the slightest hesitation. You guys are already paying attention to me, right? If you discover that I have the so-called psychic ability, don't you want to recruit me? Kidnap and imprison me? Hee, narcissist. Fine. Even if it's like this, shouldn't you be waiting for a good offer under normal circumstances? What's up with you looking like you're in a hurry to apply for a job? Luo Nan thought for a bit and responded like this. Between an outstanding student and an inexperienced employee, I choose the latter. For example, he would rather choose the Mystic Arts Research Society to be an odd job worker who could carry out independent experiments than go to the Chemistry Society and be an honest gifted student for a year. He needed pressure and opportunities. After all, he didn't have much capital left. His grandfather's time didn't have much. That circle that could possibly be filled with ability users. Even if he had to crash into it, he had to crash into it. And he had to do it in the most efficient way. Luo Nan stood up and faced Zhang Yingying. Under her stunned expression, he gave a proper bow. Therefore, I ask Lawyer Zhang to seriously consider this and give me a chance to join. Chapter 29. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. Shuanet provides you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying maintained her silence for a few seconds after Luo Nan bowed. Love goes small say netku. Only when Luo Nan straightened his body and looked straight ahead did Zhang Yingying pursed her lips slightly. She slowly opened her mouth and her voice sank a bit. I can understand how you feel. Even though they have amazing abilities, they don't know how to explore their secrets. They can only face one problem after another and walk in circles. Looking around, they can't find anyone they can communicate with. They don't know what kind of attitude the world has towards a different kind. Many people in the circle were once like this. She took a light step forward and placed her hand on Luo Nan's shoulder. Only this time, her hand was placed extremely gently. You have determination. This is very good. But you have to understand, what you will face. Zhang Yingying's voice suddenly swallowed. Luo Nan looked over in astonishment. He saw the female lawyer's face. Her eyebrows, the corner of her eyes, the line of her lips, and even her plump cheeks all trembled and warped. In the end, she couldn't hold it in. She exploded with laughter. Pfft. Ah, I'm sorry. Zhang Yingying's saliva sprayed directly onto Luo Nan's face. She hurriedly reached out her hand to wipe it off, but halfway through, she saw Luo Nan's incomparably marvelous expression. A second wave of explosive laughter erupted out. In the end, she could only powerlessly press down on Luo Nan's shoulder to support her body. She laughed to her heart's content the entire way, ha 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 ha. Oh, my God, you really believed it, didn't you? I've only heard of such a fledgling before, and now I've finally met one. Zhang Yingying laughed until she was curled up powerlessly. Her chin was pressed against Luo Nan's shoulder, preventing her from crouching to the ground. Luo Nan had a warm and fragrant body in his embrace, but who knew how much of a shadow this hot and sexy beauty had cast over him? Of course, Zhang Yingying knew that she had gone overboard. She apologized with all her might, but every time she apologized, she couldn't help but break down when she saw Luo Nan's expression. She tossed and turned until the military sent people over to urge them to leave the ship. Only then did she recover. Nearly 24 hours later, the investigation by the government, the military, and Quantum Corporation finally came to an end. There was no reason to detain too many people, so they began to chase them away. Zhang Yingying held onto the crook of Luo Nan's arm the entire time they were on the way out of the ship. She begged for forgiveness with soft words. Even though everyone was looking at him, he had no intention of letting go. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. As a man, you must be broad-minded, right? At most, I won't say that your chick can't grow up anymore. Crack. Luo Nan finally called a halt. He understood. She wasn't using her beauty. She was using awkwardness to force him. Luo Nan had to concede defeat to Zhang Yingying's shamelessness. Moreover, he was a bit irritated by her style of beating around the bush and not getting to the point. All right, Lawyer Zhang, Miss Zhang, I just want to know about this industry, information that is meaningful. Let's leave everything else in the past, okay? Zhang Yingying was finally satisfied. She let go of him with a grin. Sure, let's talk in the car. Luo Nan bid farewell to the military transport ship. He bid farewell to an entire day of annoyance. He sat in Zhang Yingying's sports car. Love go small say Netka. Luo Nan intentionally kept his distance from this shameless girl, so he sat alone in the back seat. Zhang Yingying turned to look at his expression and almost burst out laughing again. Only when Luo Nan raised his cold and sinister gaze did she restrain herself a bit. All right. Let's get to the point. First of all, I can be sure that you've certainly read too many novels. You think that people like us carry out mysticism from beginning to end and form some secret society or dark organization? Aside from not reading novels, everything else was correct. Luo Nan was speechless for a time. Zhang Yingying chuckled as she started the car. What era are we in right now? Experts don't flaunt. They don't show off their consummate skills. They might as well be dead. Our industry is actually quite active. There's only one reason why you haven't discovered it: there are too few people. The flying car set a path to Acumen College. It cut into the superconducting road and entered a constant speed gliding state. The percentage of ability users has been constantly rising in recent years. But according to the most recent and most extensive statistics, excluding the vagrants of the wilderness and the burners of the military, there is only one ability user per 20,000 people. There are less than 600,000 people in the entire world. As for the number of awakened who are truly recognized by the circle, the number is even fewer. According to the latest statistics of the society, there are approximately 70,000 people. This is the result of the society's constant promotion of the Awakening Project and the nurturing of new people for the past 20 years. Society. Luo Nan caught onto the keyword. It's a professional society. We also need to protect our rights and interests, okay? Of course, due to our small scale, we are affiliated with the International Science Exploration Association. We are classified as professional explorers. In the future, you can directly go to the Exploration Association of this city. You can resolve a lot of miscellaneous matters there. Let's continue talking. Due to their bloodlines, inheritances, and radiation circles, the distribution of the 70,000 awakened is extremely uneven. There are 88 large metropolitan areas. Some only have 2 or 3 awakened. A relatively lively place like Xia City only has 1,000 awakened. Among them, there is a considerable portion who prefer to adventure and train in the wilderness. There are even fewer awakened who stay in the city. You need to understand. The majority of these 1,000 people have their noses in the air. They are arrogant and unruly. They are eccentric and perverted. If you want to gather them together and form some secret organization. I'm sorry. I have to laugh a bit longer. Luo Nan listened attentively. He obtained a set of practical numbers from Zhang Yingying's mouth. Each image gradually constructed a strange yet marvelous world in his heart. Half an hour later, the flying car approached the campus of Acumen College. The flying car connected to the guiding light rail and began to line up to enter the landing platform. Luo Nan asked a few key questions after Zhang Yingying's explanation. Then he immediately returned to his quiet and introverted state, writing and drawing in his notebook. However, the vast majority of his drawings were messy lines with no meaning to them. He didn't produce any new works. This caused Zhang Yingying, who had been secretly watching him all this time, to be quite disappointed. Zhang Yingying teased him as they entered the landing platform. Are you nervous? You can't even draw anything. Shouldn't I be nervous when applying for a job? Especially when I heard you say that there's an entrance examination. Relax. This circle is very thirsty for new blood. Since you have a certain amount of ability and have applied to join the society, it can be said that you have a 100% chance of passing. The only difference is the initial evaluation. Do you still care about this bit of empty reputation? Oh, we're here. The car couldn't stay for more than a minute after entering the landing platform. Zhang Yingying didn't waste any more words. She said her goodbyes in a natural and unrestrained manner. You already have my contact information. We also have a common understanding regarding the matter of psychics. Then, I wish you a smooth entrance examination. Many thanks for your help. Luo Nan gave Zhang Yingying a deep glance. He nodded and left in the same straightforward and efficient manner. Zhang Yingying sent him off with a smile. She had a calm bearing. But when Luo Nan left, she went, with a laugh. Her snow-white slender beautiful legs exerted strength and she threw off her high heels. She stood on the control panel and dialed a number. The signal connected, and she shouted, "You're right. Boss, I discovered a very tender seedling. You must give me a bonus this month." Chapter 30. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Acumen College was located in the Pingjiang district. It belonged to the outskirts of the core city district of Xia City. Aside from the college, there were many high schools, and research institutes in great numbers. Together, they formed an education function area of nearly 100 square kilometers. It was one of the areas with the best culture and natural environment in Xia City. After Zhang Yingying escorted Luo Nan to school, she turned the car around and arrived at a research institute a few kilometers away from Acumen College. This research institute was under the name of the International Science Exploration Society. It was actually a meeting point set up by the awakened. Since the number of awakened in Xia City was sparse, this place was left empty all year round. Sometimes, there would be several months in a row without a trace of a person. However, when Zhang Yingying entered, she saw the rare figure of Aunt Susan, who was on duty. "Hey, Susan. Congratulations on gaining another 5 kilograms. Aunt Susan was half Caucasian. It was said that she was an extremely beautiful mixed blood when she was young, but now she was just a lazy and crude middle-aged woman weighing 120 kilograms. Her favorite hobby was to stay at home and play games. Because of this, she and Zhang Yingying could be considered kindred spirits. They usually had a pretty good relationship. I'm working overtime every day. I'm going to die. Susan's thick chin shook as she complained loudly. What happened to the society's principle of say no to altered people? It hasn't even been 5 years and they're already saying, burners don't belong to altered people. They were originally targeting the archetype format's modifications. But now they're all changing their words one by one. They're a bunch of spineless liars. Zhang Yingying went, wow, they're going to recruit burners into the society. But the first batch of burners hasn't reached the end of their service period yet, right? I remember the agreement was 20 years. But there's a batch that retired early due to injuries. There's around 200 people. Our place will soon become the Veteran Society. 200 people. Zhang Yingying's eyes widened. How many burners are there in the entire world? 17,626 people. This is the latest data. Susan looked crude, but she was actually very sensitive to numbers. This made her the secretary who grasped the statistics of the society. She had great authority. We don't need to wait for the large-scale retirement wave in 20 years. In 10 years, the society's authority will be snatched away by the government. I'm not that pessimistic. Zhang Yingying did not intend to delve into this topic. She moved closer to Susan and looked at the various data in the giant projection area. Coincidentally, Susan zoomed in on someone's information, which surprised Zhang Yingying. He Wei, captain of ship Lanshan's Special Forces Team 7. I just came out from there. 20 years old. When did she undergo the transformation? The first batch. It said that they got into a car accident when they were 15 years old and their lives were in danger. They used burners to modify themselves and extend their lives. After that, they developed in the military. They have outstanding military achievements and extraordinary backgrounds. They just retired today. But soon, she will become our vice president. Susan's words were full of sarcasm and ridicule, but when it came to grading, she didn't hesitate to mark this person with a C+. In terms of entrance evaluation, this was already the highest grade. As a matter of fact, the two people present only had a C rating. Zhang Yingying clicked her tongue. Seeing that Susan was going to continue, she quickly pressed her hand. Susan, dear, let me cut the queue. Susan glared at him with her swollen piggy eyes. F***CK off. Do you know how busy I am right now? The grading and data entry of over 200 people needs to be completed within 5 days. Damn it, this isn't something that can be solved with a few keystrokes. Of course. I know you're having a hard time, but think about our friendship. Last week, I accompanied you to play Records of the Fallen Shackles War. That was 3 days and 3 nights. I wanted you to play a few rounds of Wilderness with me later, but you ran away. Susan had a bit of a guilty conscience. I came back to work overtime. The grudges of working overtime will be solved through working overtime. Zhang Yingying picked up her flexible screen and slapped it onto the control panel in front of Susan. It's just this one person. I need him to enter the database today and apply for a grading evaluation. That's all. Susan mumbled to herself, but in the end, she still stopped what she was doing and activated Zhang Yingying's flexible screen. Oh my god. It's 10 days in the wilderness again. Are you still not tired of playing? Susan quickly found the relevant module and connected it to the large projector in front of her. Zhang Yingying had done the preparatory work quite well. It saved Susan a lot of effort. Playback. Within the projection area, the scene of Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying's match in the game began to be replayed. This included the hand gestures he used to control his game character. It also included the movements of the game character, the changes in tactics, and so on. Zhang Yingying didn't slack off because she had personally experienced it. She continued to observe very seriously. She was even more focused than Susan. Luo Nan was indeed a novice from his control techniques. There were a lot of redundant movements, and there were many times where he would make mistakes. This resulted in weapons not being switched in time, multiple weapon coordination failures, and so on. However, all of this was meaningless from Zhang Yingying's perspective. She wasn't testing Luo Nan's esports level. Instead, she was testing something deeper. For example, when Luo Nan chose the trajectory of Blacktooth's bullets, the lines he drew with his fingers were so precise that it was as if he was using a ruler to trace them. Another example was when he faced Feng Huang's erratic movements. After suffering 2 losses, the accuracy of his predictions made Zhang Yingying secretly grind her teeth. Some of Luo Nan's qualities could be seen from these, but they weren't the core. Susan made a move at this time. She pressed her right hand to the center of the sensing area, and a brilliant white light immediately split the projected area into 2 halves. The game scene and Luo Nan's control playback were on one side. The corresponding real-time data chart was on the other side. As the scene played back, the numbers in many areas on the chart began to jump, pulling out many undulating and fluctuating trend curves. Over half of them were hovering in low positions, and they were relatively flat without any changes. But there were still 3 that had relatively large changes. Zhang Yingying displayed an even more focused expression. The control delay is from 12 to 09, and the stable time is over 4 hours. TSK. This level of concentration, and you say you don't like games. The increase in lethality is between 1% to 8%. It's a bit low, but it's not a problem if it can be increased. Character activation. The degree of personification is from 52% to 72%. 20 points. Passing is not a problem. Zhang Yingying let out a long breath. Not to mention the ability, his basic qualities weren't without redeeming qualities. This made people a lot less worried. Another non-combatant. Your firm really doesn't have anyone else. It's not easy to make money with this kind of target, okay? Susan curled her lips and used the software to give a preliminary evaluation. Name, Luo Nan. Age, 16 years old, puberty, ability direction, mental enhancement, precision, level determination, unawakened, no points, potential standard, E+ recommended direction, precision control, maintenance, and production. Susan skillfully imported the data into the Society's exclusive database. She pressed a button and the system automatically sent out a contact message. It connected with a certain fledgling several kilometers away. Chapter 31. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. To provide you with wonderful novels to read. Done. After finishing, Susan waved her hand to signal Zhang Yingying, who had disturbed her overtime, to scram. Zhang Yingying shamelessly refused to leave. Wait, I want to see who's participating in the actual assessment. Why do you care? Doesn't your firm only show its strength during the awakening ceremony? Within the professional association, there were 3 stages of care for newcomers. Altogether, there were 3 stages: assessment, awakening ceremony, and professional designation. Among them, the assessment was the most formalistic. To truly influence the newcomers and form cliques, they had to wait until the last 2 stages. Zhang Yingying giggled and replied, "We're very optimistic about this newcomer." You say that every time. Susan frowned. Yingying, is it interesting to ponder over newcomers every day? Moreover, they're all non-combatants. Their awakening is a bit easier, and your family's Empress Wu is indeed a specialist. She's guided quite a few people over the years and earned a lot of wealth. But, in our circle, this is the most important. A fat fist lightly pounded on the sensing area, emitting a muffled sound. Too much wealth attracts thieves. A tall tree attracts the wind. The richer you are, the more people will think about you. Look, 70% of the people in the Hidden Indigo firm are non-combatants. How can you guarantee your safety? You should know that not everyone inside and outside the association is willing to chat and talk business with you. Zhang Yingying's eyebrows jumped. Humph, that group of jealous people. They didn't even think about it. From Wu Jiaoyi to Her Majesty, it's only been a few years. Ha, my dear Susan, I know you're doing this for my own good. She revealed a smile as she spoke, wanting to hug Susan's fat face and give her a sweet kiss. Susan unhappily pushed her away. Little girl, are you pretending to be stupid or are you really stupid? I remember you used to be quite opinionated. How come you've completely become a yes man for Your Majesty these past 2 years? I still remember that for 2 years in a row, you haven't made any progress. Is your white rainbow blunt? Seeing that Susan was really angry, Zhang Yingying's smile faded a bit. She shrugged, I just agree with what the boss said. Even if a person has a heavy fist that can smash the world, it has no effect on the continuation of the existence of society. When he smashes the world, it is equivalent to erasing his essence. In the end, what governs society is still the resources and production that sustain its existence. Abstractly speaking, it is the economy and its various advanced forms. If we use our abilities on this, the efficiency will be even higher. Susan rolled her eyes. I think you've been brainwashed by Her Majesty Empress Wu. Strong fists can also suppress others and obtain everything. Zhang Yingying crossed her arms in front of her chest. We can do it in an easier and more perfect way. Susan punched the censor again. You can't turn these things into fists. A fist that completely belonged to him. That way, others will be able to easily obtain everything by suppressing you. Who said that? The truth will prove everything. The puffy-eyed man and the almond-eyed man confronted each other, neither giving way to the other. When the message popped up on their wristbands at the same time, they snorted and lowered their heads. The priority notification flashed on the screen. Emergency meeting. All the awakened who are currently in Xia City need to participate. All virtual forms are rejected. It feels like a hangmen banquet. Screw you. But it's a bad omen. I feel like it's not bad to be able to attend 50%. At most 50%. Zhang Yingying and Susan reached a common understanding in the time it took to exchange a few words. Then they pressed confirm at the same time. Susan shook her head. She no longer paid attention to the half-finished work. She raised her fat body and prepared to turn off her phone and leave. Hey. I still need to see the reply. See my ass. That kid probably forgot. Come. I'll take a ride in your car. He's clearly very impatient. Forget it. Let's go to the meeting first. I'll say this first. If you crush my car, you'll play with me in the wilderness for at least 10 days and 10 nights. I'll crush you for 10 days and 10 nights. The two laughed and laughed as they walked. They left their dispute in the completely empty research institute. Zhang Yingying was still considering whether or not she should give Luo Nan a call when she started the sports car. But she had second thoughts. That kid was sensitive and paranoid. Pressing him too hard wouldn't be good. So she put the matter aside for now. The sports car drove out of the main entrance of the research institute. It just so happened that it brushed past a powerful and luxurious Titan. Titan was the world's #1 hardcore car. And the most top-end version, Sky's Fury, was simply a floating tank. It was majestic and awe-inspiring. Lian Yu was sitting alone in the spacious back seat of the car at this time. Even if she lifted up the armrests and the foot pedals, she would still feel empty. It was just like her indescribably restless mood at this moment. Why did she agree to Li Xuecheng's request to sit in his car back to school? Her current situation was completely different from what she had imagined. Li Xuecheng's usual clingy temperament was completely different. He sat in the front by himself. He didn't talk to her at all during the ride. Instead, he made a few calls in a row. She didn't know what he was up to. Lian Yu had an ominous premonition, but she didn't want to think too deeply about it. She could only force herself to calm down and take out her makeup. A voice suddenly leapt into her ear while she was in a daze. It's been a while since I've seen the school's locker room. Especially the men's locker room. Suddenly hearing these words, Lian Yu's hand trembled and the makeup mirror fell to her feet. She bent down to pick it up. At this time, the spacious front seat turned around. The usually thin Li Xueqing sat on it. At first glance, he looked like a teenager that hadn't grown up. Lian Yu forced a smile and reached out to pick up the makeup mirror. But Li Xueqing, who was in front of her, also bent down as if to help. He grabbed Lian Yu's hand. "Jia Yu, I'm sorry. I've disappointed you today." "Disappointed your mother? What qualifications do you have to say that?" Li Xueqing's surprisingly gentle voice didn't resonate with Lian Yu at all. Instead, it made her hair stand on end. Thinking that she was actually being fantasized about by such a guy, she almost slapped him. But as soon as she struggled, she saw Li Xueqing's gloomy and green face. It was like ice water was poured over her head. The virtual fire that had just been ignited was instantly extinguished. She could only speak as gently as possible. "Xueqing, calm down first, I'm very calm. On the way here, I've already prepared a gift for you. Although it's not that pleasing to the eye." As he spoke, the projector had already projected a bustling stream of people to the empty space to the left of the two of them. It was just as Li Xueqing had said before. This was a school changing room. The people coming and going were all young students. Lian Yu noticed that the projection was displayed from a first-person perspective. It was like some immersive game. The controlled character even took the initiative to reveal the tools in their hands. A taser gun. A needle-less syringe. And in front of the character was a barely familiar figure. He was standing in front of a locker, changing clothes. That was Luo Nan. Lian Yu's voice trembled unconsciously. "What do you want to do?" Li Xueqing gently kneaded Lian Yu's palms. He laughed in a low voice. "I heard that he was the only one who passed the urine test in our group. He's like a white lotus. I'm afraid that the brothers won't accept this result." Lian Yu couldn't help but raise her voice. "The police have already concluded the case. What's the point of you blocking him now?" Li Xueqing had a face of astonishment. "Don't they say that there's a withdrawal period when you take drugs? What's the point of taking drugs again and again? Come, let's play together, let's go. Double the monthly vote if you think this chapter is brilliant. Support me a bit, you can also vote for me. 100 crosstalk coins to draw monthly votes, 500 crosstalk coins, 10,000 crosstalk coins, 100,000 crosstalk coins to be the leader of the alliance." Chapter 32. A Genius in 1 Second. Remember love? SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. On the projection inside the car, the field of view slowly advanced forward. It swayed slightly along with the rise and fall of the gate. The distance to Luo Nan was getting closer and closer. Li Xueqing's mood became more and more engrossed. The strength of his hand increased, squeezing Lian Yu's hand to the point of pain. His mouth was still chattering endlessly. "Jia Yu, did you know? I've loved playing these kinds of real-life games since I was young." "What virtual reality? Immersion? Compared to this, they're really weak. This is a real game that you've single-handedly controlled. In this place, there is absolutely no such thing as within 3 steps, the enemy is the enemy of a country. No matter how amazing the target is, he can only touch my puppet at most. He can't touch the incorporeal threads woven by money. He can't even touch me." Look at their helpless and irritated expressions all the way to their complete failure and collapse. There's nothing more interesting than this. Lian Yu's legs were already trembling unconsciously. The current Li Xueqing looked far too unfamiliar. Although this fellow was petty in the past, he was still quite careful with his face. He absolutely wouldn't have this sort of heartfelt monologue. He was clearly rolling in the mud, yet he still had an intoxicated expression. His entire person was already twisted. It seemed that the humiliation of being scared unconscious by Luo Nan yesterday had stimulated him into a madman. Lian Yu was fully aware that there was simply no way to communicate with a madman. But the problem was that Li Xueqing had an incomparably expectant expression, waiting for her response. She slightly moved the corner of her lips. She thought for a long time before squeezing out a few words. Wouldn't it cause too much of a commotion if we fight here? If everyone sees him being attacked, then his withdrawal period. Li Xueqing's expression became gentle again. He gently caressed the back of Lian Yu's hand. Jiayu, you're worrying too much. I'm not that stupid. Right now we're just feeling the atmosphere. A good game's plot must be solid. It can't be simple and crude. Come, let's watch together. As he spoke, Li Xueqing's hand exerted a bit more strength. Lian Yu didn't react at first, but her hand was pulled again. Only now did she wake up. After a bit of hesitation, she slightly lifted her butt to get up. The next moment, Li Xueqing, who was already impatient, forcefully pulled her into his embrace. Lian Yu let out a low cry, and was already embraced by Li Xueqing. Fortunately, the madman's main focus was not on this. After a deep embrace, he rested his chin on her shoulder and pressed his face against hers, maintaining an intimate position as he continued to observe the game. Since the two of them were now at the same angle, the car's AI very humanely expanded the projection range. With the support of the first-person perspective and the immersion function of the contact lenses, it was almost the same as being there in person. The recording and playback equipment faithfully restored the original sound environment in the changing room, and the buzzing sound waves made Lian Yu even more upset. Acumen College started from the 7th grade and implemented the Western style of rotating classes. There were no fixed classrooms. The students were like wild chickens, gathering and dispersing from time to time. Among the few crowded areas, the locker room was probably the noisiest. Every morning before class, hundreds and thousands of people would enter and leave the school. Countless rumors and gossips were like the buzzing of flies that would never stop. All of Luo Nan's classmates were in the vicinity of his locker. But this group of people came and went, and not a single person greeted Luo Nan. An invisible person. Li Xueqing observed Luo Nan's movements with the attitude of controlling everything. He laughed happily, "You'll become famous soon." Just as he said before, Li Xueqing wouldn't go as far as to electrocute and inject Luo Nan in public. This didn't meet his expectations. He needed to properly deal with this fellow. There was more than one person who acted as Li Xueqing's puppet thug. As the son of a wealthy family with a wide network of friends, Li Xueqing was able to mobilize considerable power by disregarding the cost. Luo Nan finished changing his clothes and left with his old clothes. He was probably going to send them to the laundry room. Just as he moved, there were 4 or 5 people in the surrounding chaotic stream of people who followed him one after another. The upper left corner of the projection was like the mini-map of a classic game. The structural diagram of the nearby rooms was brought out. Li Xueqing was brimming with interest as he chose the location and method. "What do you think? Should I shove his face into the urinal? Or should I stab his butt with the shower head? Or should I shove him into the tumbling bucket?" Lian Yu's face was cold. She didn't say anything. Luo Nan's life or death had nothing to do with her. But she had inexplicably sunk into this storm. Not only would she be taken advantage of, she might even face Xie Juanping's wrath afterwards. It wasn't worth it no matter what. The carrier of the first-person view sped up as well. The image shook more and more violently, and Li Xueqing's breathing grew more and more hurried. Luo Nan turned the corner and a few of his puppet thugs turned as well. The first-person view received a report of the surrounding environment. The stream of people ahead was gradually thinning. It was the best time to make a move. Then I'll choose option A. The urinal. No, I want a big one. Li Xueqing cackled strangely. He impatiently ordered the first-person view to hurry over to the scene as soon as possible. The view turned the corner and the stream of people instantly thinned, allowing Li Xuecheng to see things more clearly. His puppets had already gathered together and were swarming into a washroom. Li Xuecheng was a bit dissatisfied. I'll deduct money when I get back. Can't these coarse brothers act a bit more naturally? An urgent voice transmitted through the communicator before his voice even fell. That fellow jumped out the window and ran. Old Sua's feet slipped when he was chasing. He's stuck at the window. We have people outside. We've blocked him. Holy crap. The situation became chaotic beyond control in the blink of an eye. Li Xuecheng's expression was stiff at first, but he couldn't restrain his smile in the next moment. Yeah, right. If it wasn't this troublesome fellow, then what would be the point? See, this plot would be interesting, wouldn't it? He actually wasn't in a rush or impatient. He ordered the first-person view to walk out of the changing room building and chase in the direction indicated by the communicator. Li Xuecheng was also a fellow who was good at spending money. The campus gangsters he hired were experts in the art of blocking people. Even though he didn't know how Luo Nan discovered that something was wrong, a group of big and tall youths still managed to block Luo Nan in a shadowy corner behind the building after 2 minutes of chasing. By the time Li Xuecheng got close, the situation was already nearing its end. The campus gangsters wielding soft rods, knives, stun guns, and other light weapons had fallen to the ground. But they were able to forcefully stab Luo Nan's ribs with electric sparks. Luo Nan convulsed as he bent over. Li Xuecheng clapped his hands in laughter as he watched. But in the next moment, he saw Luo Nan, who was about to be submerged in the stream of people, raise his head inexplicably. His gaze actually stared straight at Li Xuecheng's position. It was as if Luo Nan was looking at Li Xuecheng from a distance. Before Li Xuecheng could come back to his senses, a deafening roar rang out behind his first-person view ear. It was the same as exploding next to Li Xuecheng's ear. What the hell are you guys doing? His body trembled, and his first-person view field of vision instantly transformed into a rapidly magnified lawn. Then it became a field of pitch-black darkness. Monthly votes counted in double. If you feel that this chapter was brilliantly written, support me a bit. You can also vote for me. 100 crosstalk monthly votes, 500 crosstalk monthly votes, 10,000 crosstalk monthly votes, 100,000 crosstalk monthly votes to be the leader of the alliance. Chapter 33. Genius in 1 second. Remember Love Go. TalkNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The camera shot the ground at close range. The sound recorder and the like were still working. All one could hear was the sound of fists and flesh colliding. Miserable screams rang out one after another. It was noisy and chaotic. In the end, it seemed that a group of people had chased far away. Only then did the scene return to tranquility. Li Xuecheng was speechless for a time. When he came back to his senses, he saw that the first-person view wouldn't be able to stand up for a while. He tried to adjust the camera remotely, his mouth still muttering, "If I had known earlier, I would have used the hovering type." The camera suddenly shook greatly. The scene changed. It cut through the building, the lawn, the sky, and the intermittent silhouette of a person. The shaking made one's eyes dizzy. Steady down. Li Xuecheng thought that the first-person view had recovered. He rushed to give the order, but he soon discovered that something was wrong. The silhouette in the shaking camera was too close. Moreover, that ice-cold and calm gaze gradually focused on the camera. How familiar was it? F***CK. Li Xuecheng smashed his fist heavily on the armrest. He finally understood what the current situation was. Luo Nan was currently holding the unconscious first-person view, searching for clues. And he soon discovered the problem. The shaking of the camera grew smaller and smaller. Luo Nan's face grew clearer and clearer. Lian Yu's hand grew more and more painful. She lifted her eyelids to look at Li Xuecheng, who was within reach. Luo Nan probably noticed her gaze. His ashen face became a bit livelier. The corner of his mouth twitched before he finally squeezed out a smile. This level seems to be a game. It's over. His clumsy self-mockery and Lian Yu's obedient attitude allowed Li Shueqing to recover a bit of confidence. He raised his voice, but like I said just now. Does he know who did it? If he knows I did it, can his claws reach over? For example, right now. I can say hello to him. Li Shueqing was about to switch the communicator to an external mode, but halfway through, he saw Luo Nan's seemingly direct gaze. He hesitated. In the end, he laughed and stubbornly replied. I can also ignore him. He turned off the projector as he spoke, refusing to receive any more information from the other side. He faced Lian Yu's gaze and began to talk incessantly. Jia Yu, I've understood since I was very young. The power of capital is invisible and omnipotent. Today, this guy was lucky enough to survive the campus gangsters, but tomorrow, he might face the real gangsters. Other than that, I have many other ways to play. His parents, family, relatives, and friends are all part of the strategy. This is the real world, unlike those games, which are affected by poor programming and plot. We can play slowly. An idiot who can only sell his laughter without a teleprompter. Li Shueqing actually walked over as he spoke, sending out another kick. How could Xie Junping let him succeed again? He blocked the incoming kick and pulled horizontally, forcefully pulling Li Shueqing down. The two wrestled into a ball just like that. The bodyguards who caught up from behind were all stupefied, but Lian Jia still shouted, hurry up and separate them. The scene became even more chaotic. Lian Yu inexplicably felt that this scene was extremely familiar. She thought back somewhat absent-mindedly for a moment before remembering that the conflict between Luo Nan and Li Shueqing during their detention was more or less like this. Her slender fingers stuck into her hair, but she was unable to straighten out the tangled mess of the situation. In the end, she could only ask the heavens speechlessly, has this world gone mad? The chaotic state of Acumen College had just calmed down at this time. Luo Nan raised his wristband and pressed confirm on the confirmation email sent by the International Science Exploration Society. This task should have been completed 20 minutes ago, but he never had the leisure to do so. This was because he had an intense feeling of being spied on ever since he entered Acumen College. It was like many people were staring at him with fixed eyes. At first, Luo Nan thought that it was some kind of illusion, but this feeling grew stronger and stronger. In the end, he even heard a low crashing sound. He was very familiar with this sound. It was the heavily chained crow that he visualized. He didn't know why, but it actually took the initiative to connect to reality. It was simply a copy of the Divine Soldier's Warning, scene from a legendary novel. Because of this, Luo Nan really did pay attention. After a few rounds of observation, he finally discovered that he was being watched by many people. He found an opportunity to jump out the window and escape. Who knew that the other side would bring out such a large force to block him in the end? If it wasn't for a warm-hearted person who saw injustice and came to help, who knew how things would have ended today? Oh, why hasn't the warm-hearted person returned yet? The situation was far too chaotic at the time. Luo Nan only remembered that the person who came was tall and sturdy. He swept over like a gust of wind, chasing the group of campus hooligans everywhere. He ran, and then he disappeared without a trace. Acumen College was a place where geniuses came forth in large numbers. Luo Nan shook his head. He saw that there weren't many onlookers in the surroundings, but he took advantage of the fact that his senses were still present to enter the visualization state. It was getting easier and easier for him to enter the fixed space right now. He saw that the heavily chained crow was exceptionally active in the center of the space of nothingness. It coiled and coiled inside and outside the visualization diagram. However, what drew the most attention was the ball of weak, dark red light at the front end of the chain. Within the light, twisted lines formed an abstract symbol. It made Luo Nan feel quite familiar. The dark red luster became the best hint. Luo Nan remembered a few seconds later. Wasn't this the outline of the burning wraith's main body when it stirred up the sea of spores on the warship? Many lines overlapped with the burning wraith when Luo Nan first drew it, but it was far from being as concise and abstract as it was now. Double monthly votes if you feel that this chapter was written brilliantly. Support me a bit. You can also vote for me. 100 crosstalk monthly votes, 500 crosstalk monthly votes, 10,000 crosstalk monthly votes, 100,000 crosstalk monthly votes to be the Alliance Master. Chapter 34. A Genius in 1 Second Remembers Love. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The soft and distant sound of an electronic clock rang out. It was 8:00 in the morning. The busy and inefficient daytime had once again opened its curtains. Luo Nan waited for a long time for the warm-hearted person to not arrive. He saw that the few thugs who had been knocked down had more or less recovered. He didn't want to clean up this mess, so he simply turned around and left. He didn't ask who was targeting him in the end. On one hand, he didn't believe that these thugs truly understood the inside story. On the other hand, he looked at the needleless syringe that had fallen to the ground and the special solution inside. He had a rough guess. Luo Nan sat in the classroom. He didn't listen to a single word of the teacher's lecture in class. The notebook in front of him was spread open. It was an abstract symbol drawn with a fluorescent pen. He utilized the color adjustment function to turn the lines into a dark red color. There was practically no difference from what was displayed in the fixed space. Luo Nan stared at the symbol on the notebook. It naturally corresponded with the burning wraith. This symbol was very marvelous. When Luo Nan tried to use it as the core to restore the burning wraith's concrete image, he inexplicably felt that any stroke would be superfluous. These dozen or so lines intertwined and coiled. They already contained all of the burning wraith's special characteristics. They were packed to the brim. There was simply no way to start. Luo Nan held the pen in his hand, but he didn't. He held it in until his heart was uncomfortable. He simply stopped demanding perfection. He casually sketched the lines. His mind was pondering the reason for the appearance of the abstract symbol. The burning wraith had been besieged and exterminated on the warship. This was a matter without a doubt. But the symbol that had appeared on the chains of his own visualization was real. Luo Nan thought over and over again. There was only one reason: the heavily chained crow had once analyzed the mysteries of the burning wraith's core layer when it was controlling the burning wraith. Even though the burning wraith had been exterminated, its core characteristics still left traces on the chains. It possessed a certain function. Then, the warning of the crisis this morning wasn't from the heavily chained crow. It was from this symbol that originated from the burning wraith. This was because the burning wraith was extremely sensitive to fear, ruthlessness, and other negative emotions. It was able to borrow these emotions for its own use. It was precisely because of its specialization. Luo Nan also felt that the existence of the symbol was a bit stronger than it was in the beginning after the clash just now. Its strength seemed to be continuously recovering. Could it be that the burning wraith could rely on the symbol to resurrect? Luo Nan's mind stirred slightly. If this was true, then it couldn't be any better. The battle prowess of the burning wraith had already been completely revealed on the warship. If he had such a protector, why would he need to fear those campus thugs? Even if he went back to the professional association, he would have one more trump card, and it would be much easier. Was there any way to speed up the recovery of the burning wraith? Oh. Luo Nan suddenly felt that the tip of his pen was a bit rough. He looked at the notebook once more and saw that the perfectly fine abstract symbol had already been drawn into a nondescript state. Just like the burning wraith, the comparison was completely wrong. However, he seemed to be able to continue drawing. Luo Nan's interest was instantly piqued by Luo Nan's inexplicable inspiration. Luo Nan did subtraction most of the time when he drew. All of the structure, lines, and shading arrangements were simplified. All this was done for the sake of highlighting the most core characteristics of the material. In his memory, the only time he did addition was when he achieved the breakthrough of "My Heart's a Prison." At that time, he only had an abstract concept, but he didn't have the corresponding image. It was precisely through his continuous sprinkling of inspiration and filling in the details that he built a temporary grand structure, from which he extracted the heavily chained crow. The current situation was a bit similar to yesterday's. He didn't have that much inspiration, but as long as he had a clear general direction, the relevant details and clues were still quite considerable. For example, the needleless syringe. For example, the taser gun. For example, those hoodlums. Luo Nan continued to look at the clumsy sketch, tinkering here and there. A certain image had been buried deep in the bottom of his heart, out of shape, but now it became more and more clear. What finally appeared on the notebook was a group of blurry buildings, but it was vaguely similar to the regional structure of Acumen College. The drawing was sloppy and blurry. Anyone who looked at it would probably be baffled. They would just treat it as a clumsy and unfinished sketch. But Luo Nan knew that this drawing was already finished. It was already filled with all of his inspiration and known information. It also revealed the most important answer. In the core region, where the abstract symbol was located, a silhouette of a person was formed in the end. It was a fellow who appeared fierce in appearance but was weak in heart. He used exaggerated body movements to conceal the fear in his heart. Also, Luo Nan stared fixedly at the drawing. A layer of fiery light seemed to flow above the dark red lines. He was illuminated by the fiery light and became a bit dazed. It was like the feeling of alienation between his mind and body before and after the out-of-body experience. But under this sort of state, the blurry information on the drawing suddenly became clear. The target was approximately 3 kilometers away. It was somewhere southwest of the campus. The corresponding building of the school was the medical department. Luo Nan was stupefied when the clear information scrambled to jump into his brain. Could it be that this was the technique of a psychic? It was simply like sleepwalking. He randomly pieced together all sorts of elements, but in the end, he was able to obtain a relatively clear answer. But he didn't know how those true psychics worked. Oh, if it was the medical department, Luo Nan suddenly remembered that he had an appointment for a physical examination yesterday. The time. Fine, it was already past. However, the memories always appeared in a chain. Luo Nan remembered that when he logged onto the Secret Star forums yesterday, there was a netizen called Yuling who was also affected by the burning wraith. He said that he brought his wife along for a physical examination. Luo Nan didn't know if he found anything or not. Luo Nan really wanted to collect information related to the burning wraith. His flexible screen was broken, so he used his wristband to connect to the miniature projector on his desk. He connected to the external network and went to the Secret Star forums to look at the news. Luo Nan nearly didn't recognize the forum the moment he logged onto it. The entire forum was filled with a solemn and heavy gray color. There was no other color. The central interface turned into a dark black hole horizon, and the theme was, "The exploration has not ended, but the souls of heroes are not far away, Soul Concentration Memorial Post." Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment. He opened the post and the first thing he saw was an excerpt of news. The general idea was, a couple who lived in the R&D district had gone to the hospital for a checkup yesterday afternoon. Due to an argument, the wife was suspected to have a psychotic episode. She lost her mind and stabbed her husband to death. At the bottom, there were thick, bold, black words, "Be alert. Be alert. Be alert. The influence of the nightmare event has far exceeded our expectations. Everyone must be on high alert and think of every possible way to find out the truth." Luo Nan stared at this news all the way until the end of class. The students dispersed and headed to the next class location. Luo Nan also stood up and walked out of the classroom. However, he didn't go in the direction of a classroom. Instead, he went in the direction of the medical department, which was 3 kilometers away. However, not long after he walked out of the classroom, he felt slightly dizzy. Double monthly ticket. If you think this chapter is interesting, please support it. You can also vote for it. 100 cross-court coins monthly ticket, 500 vertical coins, 10,000 cross-court coins, 100,000 cross-court coins to be the leader of the alliance. Chapter 35. A genius in 1 second remembers love. SpeakNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan stood firm with a single step, enduring the initial period of dizziness. After a while, he tried to move his hands and flexed his toes. Sure enough, he discovered that some of his fingers and joints were sore and numb. His entire body felt as if he had drunk too much alcohol. His reaction sensitivity had inexplicably dropped by a level. Moreover, the state of a spring of ideas and flashes of inspiration were no longer present. It was as if his brain was covered by a layer of membrane. He was drowsy and wanted to sleep. Luo Nan didn't panic. He just sighed, "It's still here." Since he was detained on the warship yesterday, he only came out in the wee hours of the morning. It was impossible for him to concoct drugs again. Well, with the state of his drug reserves, there was nothing he could do even if he went home. Therefore, the daily work of concocting drugs that he had painstakingly maintained for nearly 5 years had finally come to an end. The discomfort he felt just now mostly came from the abnormal activity of his nervous system. It could be considered a kind of drug withdrawal reaction. Luo Nan had been mentally prepared for this after the problem with his drug channel. He was also very vigilant when he accelerated his metabolism yesterday. He just didn't expect that this problem would only erupt now that the stage of tight defense and slow defense had already passed. Luo Nan swayed as he walked a few steps. He felt fine. He could barely hold on. But he didn't need to look in the mirror to know that his face was certainly terrible. Well, now he had a legitimate reason to go to the medical department. 20 minutes later, Luo Nan strolled slowly into the medical department. This was the medical department of Acumen College. It was also a rather famous general hospital in Xia City. It was open to the students of the college for free. But before entering, one must first make an appointment online and have their identity verified. Luo Nan's criteria for making an appointment with a doctor was very simple. He would choose the one with the longest queue. After making the appointment, he ignored the information on the appointment form and strolled around the medical department. It looked like he was wandering aimlessly, but his target's senses were already extremely clear when he stepped into the main building of the medical department. It should be around 70 meters to the east. That was the inpatient department. Luo Nan could even feel that the target's heart was overflowing with resentment and fear as he got closer and closer. The target's heart was coiled and roasted in an extremely warped manner. There was also an unending stream of distracting emotions mixed in. It was like a barbecue steak that was endlessly sprinkled with seasoning. Why was he thinking this? Right when he was baffled by his own thoughts, his feet began to sway slightly. The shaking soon became violent. The doors and windows of the medical department creaked. Not again. Amidst the commotion, the patients, students, and professors of the medical department rushed out of the buildings like ants moving. In just a few minutes, they filled up the central courtyard. Love Go Small Say Netka. The hospital's emergency escape routes were also opened, ready to evacuate the critically ill patients at any time. But that was all an earthquake could do. The regular earthquake lasted for about half a minute, followed by 2 aftershocks, and then silence. Curses could be heard from all over the courtyard. The seismic activity in Xia City over the past half-month had caused special public places like the hospital to be jittery at the slightest sound. Every time there was an earthquake, they had to evacuate the people according to the regulations, and only then would they start the treatment business. Going back and forth, they could be considered lucky that there were no medical accidents. Luo Nan walked a few steps within the bustling and chaotic stream of people before suddenly coming to a stop. This was because he sensed that his target, who had been in the inpatient department, was moving at high speed. A few seconds later, an electric sightseeing car drove out from the inpatient department on the east side. It passed through the pedestrian walkway, and there was a young man dressed in casual clothes on the car. There were also a few strong men who looked like bodyguards. Luo Nan's gaze locked onto the young man's face. He recognized this person, so it wasn't unexpected at all. Yes, it was Li Xuecheng, who had been suffocated and fainted by Luo Nan's hypnosis technique yesterday. It looked like Li Xuecheng's condition wasn't all that great. His face was bruised and swollen, and his expression was dispirited, but he was also extremely anxious. He chattered endlessly to the bodyguard next to him, and he even fiercely slapped the bodyguard's shoulder and back when he spoke intensely. He gave off the feeling that he was a first-rate neurotic. Li Xuecheng, in this state, naturally couldn't see the great enemy within the stream of people on the side of the road. Instead, Luo Nan heard his own name from the few words that leaked out. Sure enough. It was this person. Luo Nan cast his gaze over, but a sudden change occurred before he could think of what to do. A dark red glowing mist suddenly soared from Li Xuecheng's body. It coiled and transformed within the interweaving shadows of the medical department building and the trees on the side of the road. In the end, it took the form of a demonic wraith with a human form. No one saw this scene, except for Luo Nan. His pupils contracted slightly. He stood still on the spot, not moving an inch. There was probably no one who was more familiar with this thing than Luo Nan. The burning wraith. It was another burning wraith. So it turned out that there wasn't just one burning wraith, and the most inconceivable thing was that Luo Nan didn't feel astonishment, vigilance, nervousness, and the like in this instant. Instead, it was a feeling of hunger. A feeling of hunger that couldn't be suppressed. The planted grain was ripe. The cooked dish was done. It looked quite delicious. Come, let's eat to our heart's content. Crash. The heavily chained crow vibrated with a cry. Its sound was like a sharp needle that fiercely pierced into the space between Luo Nan's eyebrows. Luo Nan shivered fiercely. Whatever delicacy, whatever hunger, all shattered in an instant. On the contrary, this brand new burning wraith before his eyes radiated a scorching power from the mental plane. It came pouring down towards Luo Nan. This power was clearly filled with hunger and greed. The wraith flew and pounced down towards Luo Nan. Luo Nan still didn't move an inch. He was deep in thought. The intense instinct of greed that came from this burning wraith was declaring something to him. At the same time, he was stimulated by the rapidly approaching threat. The rattling of the chains resounded in his mind, layer upon layer. The power that came from the body-mind format accumulated endlessly through this form until it reached a certain upper limit. In the next moment, the boundary between reality and illusion was torn apart noiselessly. The heavily chained crow leaped out from the space between Luo Nan's eyebrows. It collided head-on with the pouncing burning wraith and struck inside in an instant. Buzz! A miserable shriek that only existed on the mental plane shone into reality for an instant. The hundreds of doctors, nurses, students, and patients all had a moment of absent-mindedness. But soon, this fuzzy feeling disappeared without a trace. This was because the abstract symbol at the front of the heavily chained crow lit up with a lustrous radiance. The dark red radiance illuminated the originally dark interior of the burning wraith and released some sort of power. It transformed into a rapidly contracting whirlpool in an instant. The power of the whirlpool was extremely powerful. In the blink of an eye, this new understanding of the burning wraith no longer took shape. A large portion of its body was sucked into the abstract symbol by the whirlpool, increasing the brightness of the symbol. There was also a small portion that simply collapsed and dissipated in the void. The bodyguards' cries of alarm rang out from the electric sightseeing bus that just brushed past them at practically the same time. Li Xuecheng, who had just been violently lashing out, suddenly fainted in the bus. He was unconscious. A small commotion appeared in the courtyard. Li Xuecheng was hastily carried off the bus by the bodyguards and laid flat on the lawn to the side. His pupils were rolled back and he was foaming at the mouth. His face was ashen like a corpse. Luo Nan turned his eyes to see the life force that belonged to Li Xuecheng. It was like the floodgates had been opened and a flood was released. A large amount of it leaked outwards. It transformed into wisps of light smoke on a level that the naked eye couldn't detect. It followed the collapsing burning wraith and was drawn into the void vortex. Luo Nan's eyebrows locked tightly. His mind stirred slightly and the heavily chained crow retracted. The dark red abstract symbol also retracted into the space between his eyebrows. The void vortex disappeared. The process of Li Xuecheng's life force leaking out came to a screeching halt, but he had already sunk into a state of deep unconsciousness. Luo Nan stared at the unconscious Li Xuecheng on the lawn with a grave expression. Victory was like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, but he didn't feel happy at all. Luo Nan shifted his gaze away from Li Xuecheng's body after a moment. He turned towards the nearby crowd. Some people were watching curiously. Some people shot a glance and then completely ignored him. There were also doctors and nurses who rushed over. What couldn't happen in the hospital? Everything was a change in reality that people could understand. But who knew that on a plane that they couldn't touch, there were incorporeal wraith arrogantly coming and going, eroding people's hearts and sucking away their essence and energy. Luo Nan was one. Li Xuecheng was another. Perhaps, the soul couple that had a human tragedy happen were also of this type. How many more? Just how many demons had been released from that roar in the R&D district? And how many had taken form and plotted to take human lives like this? Not only that, but there was clearly competition and devouring relationships between the burning wraith. They formed a faintly discernible web of a food chain. Luo Nan stared blankly at the clamoring courtyard. Is this still the world I know? Double monthly vote if you think this chapter is brilliant, then support me a bit. You can also vote for me. 100 crosstalk monthly vote, 500 crosstalk monthly vote, 10,000 crosstalk monthly vote, 100,000 crosstalk monthly vote to be the Alliance Master. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.